Good afternoon, everyone that will be tuning in to the Dysfunction. Oh, piece that we're going to be doing today from severing at the root. So I'm excited because all of us are on the room now with all of that technical difficulties that we had. So we're just going to pause for a moment to give God the glory because He made it possible for the moment. And on today we have, check and see if I'm on, please, and everything is working. We're just going to be, what we need to be to make sure that everything goes well. All right, good. So we're on here today. We have uh, Julia Harris on the line, Prophetess Julia Harris. We have the blogger, Tatiana Green. She's on here from Bliss. We have Kent Wade. Where are you from, Kent?
I am from the city of Gems, Kankakee, Illinois.
All right. And then we have Restorer, Alicia. Yay! She's on here as our moderator to assist with me in moderation for this evening. And we have Coach T. Toria, yay, 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 yay. Well, I need a little bit more light. I look darker than y'all. Oh, wait a minute, Ken, you look darker than me too. But listen, we're going to go ahead and get started. I am so excited because we're on here today. And this is going to be 3 hours of revelation knowledge, 3 hours of understanding and wisdom. And we're looking for you all to engage with us this afternoon with your questions. There's no dumb question, no stupid question. There's no topic that's off limits because when we say severing at the root, that is exactly what we mean. Severing it at the root. We want to make sure that we get to the heart of the matter and the core of the things that have aggravated your soul and that have kept you in a place where you have been in bondage because of things that you have not been able to get released from in your life. And we want to make sure that we confront situations and circumstances in your life in this conversation, that making sure that you get the release, the deliverance, the answers, the direction, and we're going to be that wind in your back to push you forward on another level of prosperity in your life that you have never known before. So some of us that are on here today, we're cutting edge. So we mean what we say what we mean. So we're coming for, my goodness, that root, the root that needs to be severed so you can live a life free knowing that God has came to your aid. So for the first highlight of the topic that everybody begin to tune in for this afternoon, we're going to just allow just a minute for everyone to introduce themselves even more, even though I did. There may be some things that you all want to add on about yourself to let the public know who you are, what you about, what you on, and what you stand for. So we're going to start with Tatiana. Go ahead, girl.
All right. Thank you, Lady O, for having me on this panel. My name is Tatiana Green. I'm the editor-in-chief for Bliss for Singles and also the host for the Bliss for Singles podcast, which launched this year. So I love talking about dating, singleness, and relationships from a Christian perspective or faith-based perspective. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. Thank you for having me as part of me mentoring.
Julia.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you, Prophetess Adawies, for having me on your podcast today. I greatly appreciate it. But I am Julia Harris. I am currently an elder in the church. I serve as the assistant pastor of my church. I'm also by profession a licensed cosmetologist. Um, and I just love God. I love his people. Like Adawies already said, I like getting to the bottom of things, to the root of things so that we can live and let live. So I'm excited to be here.
All right. Here we have Coach T. What's your response, girl?
Hello, everybody. Once again, thank you so much for allowing me to be on this panel. I am a women's empowerment coach, and I am all about personal growth and mind shift shows. And I deal a lot with a lot of these issues on my radio show. So this is right in my zhuzh. I'm ready.
All right. Alicia, come on, say something about you, girl.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Alicia, aka Restore. I am a licensed cosmetologist and also a mentor. I'm a graphic designer and spoken word artist, influencing the community with art and with words and with my passion for people.
That's great. Mr. Wade, get away.
This is an awesome opportunity to be with such awesome individuals for this conversation. I am from Kankakee, Illinois. I am a licensed life insurance agent. I'm also help people understand what financial services is. I educate and also help people empower them through that resource. I'm also a professional public speaker, and so when people have events, I'm the MC. I'm that public speaker, that motivator to get people moving. And so this conversation is on my Richter scale when it comes to helping people with my life mission that God has given me, which is to help people shake the fear of public speaking, professional growth, and personal growth.
I like that. Shake the fear. And that's something that we can implement today about shaking the fear because that is a core, that's a root cause of a lot of people not getting freed up from things because they have allowed fear to be their forerunner in their lives. And God don't give us the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and of a sound mind. And we have to be honest with ourselves first to understand and to be able to know and to embrace it and say that I have an issue, I have a problem, I have a circumstance that it seems like it's not going anywhere and I need some help. And I want you all to understand out there in Facebook, don't ever be ashamed to ask for help or to say that you need help because we all struggle in something. We have not all arrived. It's every day that we could strive for perfection. But it's conversations like this today that can be, an assistance to you to be able to get the help that you need. So we're here to help you today, and we want you to engage with us as well, like I stated earlier. The first thing that I want to bring as a topic, Alicia, let us know you're looking. Okay. The first topic that we have is the absence of the father in the home. Let's have that conversation because that is one of the root cause of a lot of our mass shootings, murders in the streets, because we have a lot of young African American men and women that has experienced this where the father has not been present in the home. Now, a father can be physically present in the home and still be absent. So we want to make sure that we target this on a twofold level and go a little deeper in this conversation because a lot of times they're emotionally unavailable and it causes problems in our children and then they begin to turn to the streets and that's why they begin to gang up with these gangs and they feel like a sense of family and community because somebody is giving them the attention because the root of rejection is rooting their life and speaking leasing into their ears. So they go out and they join these gangs and they in these groups and then they get guns and they think they're somebody, they're prideful and they feel like they got to compete with their peers. So they go out and they brag about it and they say, well, this and then they pull the trigger, killing other people's fathers and killing mothers and killing their friends that they want to get out of a gang. When people are driven by these spirits that comes with abandonment, these are the things that happens in our society. So it is so high time right now for us to start targeting some things in conversation and deal with these things head on and not be afraid to be able to mention the things that's so important. So what I want to do is give you all the opportunity to finish this conversation and then we can kind of piggyback off of each other. So who wants to start having this discussion?
I'll start.
Oh, ladies first. Ladies first.
Okay, so I'll start. So my take on that is when the father is absent from the home, and like you said, either physically or naturally, those children grow up with such strong spirits of rejection, abandonment, and also the need to want to connect. And what I've seen with just friends that grew up with fathers absent, because I was fortunate enough to have a father in the home, and so those children they grew up with a lot of responsibilities. So they start hating that mom, you know, growing up so fast. You know, they got to help with the children and help with this and help with that. And so now they've gotten this mindset of, I was never a child. So what they do is they go out into the streets and like you said, they join gangs. Um, they want to feel accepted. They want to be loved and they're looking for love in all the wrong places. And what they do is they turn into men and women, but the child in them is still suffering. The child in them has that trauma. So when we meet people and we see them at a certain stage, just because they're 30 and 40, they're still really at 6 years old, 5 year old, because there's so many things that they didn't get as children.
Right. Kid, go ahead.
Man, that was good. That was good. Spot on. And just to add to that, when we're talking about relationships, the first relationships that you have as a child come with your mother and your father, ideally, because of that creation process. And so, shout out to all the mothers. Mother's Day passed us. However, 365 is Mother's Day because you got to give mom their energy. At the same time, growing up in the late 80s, in my generation, there was that absent father, or that absent father in the sense of in and out of jail, in and out of the family, working to figure out some things. And so when we're talking about those relationships, it start off with that mother figure, that father figure, and they begin to nurture you the way that each one of them does differently. And so when you take away that component of safety, you take away that model of protection, production, that masculine energy that men bring when it comes to leadership, you now have one person who is supposed to encompass both sides of the coin with their one nature. And so you begin to see that dysfunction in relationships starting in the home. And while we're talking on that subject, being a father, I have 4 children. My children range from 16, baby girl will be 10 soon, 8 and 5. My oldest son, I co-parented with. And so when I left the home, there was a difference in our relationship. I got to see him every other weekend. He came during holidays. He came during the summer. However, that relationship outside the home caused a huge impact. We still was close, but not as close as if I was in the house. And while I had my younger children in the house, up to my last child, I was working 2 jobs. I was traveling back and forth to Chicago. I was volunteering my energy for my community. So I was more in the community than I was in my household. And that's an example that we talked about earlier. A man could be present, a father could be present, but still not be present. Because my mind was, I'm working, and I'm coming home and I'm too tired to play, too tired to do imaginary things, too tired to read a book. And I had to shift that mindset because my wife told me, you're here, but you're not present. And that's a big difference.
That's right.
And I definitely want to piggyback on that because you talked about one person having to create almost 2 different energies to have a balance, just as it takes, even in conception, a man and a woman to create a child. They have a purpose. And when you are now in child rearing stage and both purposes are not met, they're not present, it causes an imbalance. And we like to believe that children don't feel that, but they do. They feel it inside. And because they're kids, they don't know how to really express that. So then they grow up with all this unresolved expression that they never got a chance to get articulate and give word and voice and sound to, which is how you end up with this issue of how they show up in the world, because they've not been taught how to show up in the world by a balanced two energies.
Right. That's absolutely true. So I think that a lot of the fathers at this point need to pause for station identification. And I think that we, in an opportunity, you still living and you have breath in your body and you are a father. It's time for you to take a second look at the way you are governing as a father. Now, I can understand that a man cannot follow what he has never seen. But these are the days upon us that there's other mentors and pastors and men of God, and there's other people that is out here that is willing to hear your voice, where you can get what is necessary for your life so you could be a better father to your daughters and your sons, to get them off the streets and be a man and stand up to what is right, to help us and become community, so a lot of the murders and the premature death assignments can be minimized. Because even the Bible tells us that Satan goes to and fro, seeking whom he may devour. But it's up to us. We have a responsibility to either yield to that or to be able to resist it. So these are the things that that needs to be said repeatedly over and over again, and that we cannot continue to rehearse our woes of what we did not have in our family. And we got to start putting some other things in motion to get what we need while we still yet have breath in our bodies. Because anything, anything that you've been afflicted with, you can be healed from. Anything that you've been sick with, you can get healed from. Because the Bible tells us that he is nigh to those of a broken heart. He's nigh to those that needs deliverance. He's nigh to all of us that want to give God the homage and the attention. So at this point, there's no more excuses. We need to start putting in the work as fathers. You need to put in the work as fathers and begin to rise up and start being role models, men of valor, and stand up strong and get yourself together. Point in case. There's nothing much more we can add. We
Yes,
can go a
ma'am.
little bit more in this conversation, but it is so time. You got to come up, wake up out of your deep sleep, and let's start being fathers on the level that God has designed for you to be able to be.
And let's stop being selfish. let's just add that on here. Let's stop being selfish, because what I'm seeing when I'm talking to these women that are broken and they have these issues with their daddies, it's, not some of this is because fathers and parents are just can be real selfish. And they can only think about themselves. It's like, oh, well, y'all grown now and y'all old enough now. I don't have to be as present with you as I needed to be. Yes, you do. You have to be that present and even more. Okay, because as they get older, they don't stop needing you. They start needing you. They need you less in provision way, but they need you more in advice and instruction and guidance ways. And I think that's the piece that we keep missing. So let's stop being selfish and deciding that it's our time to live because our kids are at a certain age. No, ma'am. No, sir. You still a parent, and I'm gonna need you to remember.
Absolutely. And let me say this and add this piece. Fathers leads, but daddies stay in the background. When people put a name on it or put something, they say, it's my baby daddy. I don't hear a lot of people say, oh, that's my baby's father. There's a difference. Baby daddies could be whores, homemongers, and all over the place. But fathers have vision, and they know how to stand still and be positioned to be the man and to be a leader. Something to be said. Am I right or wrong?
You're absolutely right.
That's something to think about. And so we got to unlearn to learn some things that society has suggested. We got to get it right. And we got to learn how to be people that have a readiness in our heart and have ears to hear. There's no way that we're going to get what we need if we're not listening. And that's our problem. Our ears are dull of hearing, and we're not hearing the right things. And what we hear, oh, they fussing, or they judging us, or they putting us down. No. Let me tell you something. We're speaking into your life. We're speaking in these moments, the life that is necessary to come to those dead places in your life so you can begin to rise again, or to rise, period, so you can become a father.
Absolutely. And sometimes the truth is just hard to hear. Not that it's not right. It's just hard to hear because we don't like to get smacked upside the head. It's almost like getting a whooping. The whooping don't feel good, but you needed the whooping so you could turn around and act right next week. Okay. So no, we're not beating you up, but the truth hurts if it hits you and you're found in violation. So the truth gonna hurt. So just take that on, take it on the lashing, on the back, and then just do better. Amen.
Amen.
What Tori is saying, that we're not bashing the men in this session at all. This is a conversation that's including everyone. So we're getting into the moms too. We're getting to women as well, and how both sexes can contribute to dysfunctional relationships. But if the men say they want to lead, they have to be willing to be held accountable. And so that comes with being humble enough to admit to someone who may have more authority than you in a present or season. So someone, like y'all said, a mentor or a pastor or someone of authority that you can look up to and glean from. And I work for a mentoring organization, and we have tons of stories of students throughout the state of Florida who are coming from single parent homes or coming from homes where they have parents who are there, but they can't be there for them to give them the things and the motivation they need, because a lot of them are first time college students. So we have volunteers who come out their way to meet with them and to help them get across those boundaries so they can break cycles of poverty by going to the next level and pursuing their education. So sometimes it's like we need to have a well-rounded approach to how can we get more than just the father of the child involved in the child's life. How can we get a reliable person, an uncle, an older cousin, a grandfather, or someone even outside of the family who we can look to as a role model for our child. Because honestly, like they're present may not have the tools emotionally to be there for their child because that wasn't taught to men in the same way that it may have been taught to girls growing up into women. So we had to consider that as well. And from what I read about the role of a father and what they have in terms of their power, so many people, this generation, like millennials and even the younger generation, they are not understanding the authority and the power that fathers have. And it's an important role, it's a valuable role. The role of a father is God ordained to give purpose, to give guidance, to give discipline, to give direction, to give that protection and covering, to be a physical representation of God's protection and his giving us purpose, you know? So it's a big thing. It's like so many different factors are into play as to why fathers may not be in the lives of their children. We can't blame it on one particular thing because there's more than one layer involved in all of it. So it's we just have to look at if you see fatherlessness in your life and you have to do that work to figure out what that is and gain some empathy for the parent, and if that person was abusive to you, you have to navigate the work that comes with forgiveness. And that my heart goes out to you. That's not the easiest thing to experience because, having abuse of any kind is trauma, and it can cause dysfunction in how you look at love, how you can look at relationships. So you have to seek those resources to get the help you need because like Adawi said and like you all said, we don't have to carry those burdens with us the rest of our lives. There is healing and ability for us to be where God wants us to be.
And you said something, Tatiana, and I think because we're birthday twins, I picked it up. Is that with that healing and that process, that there's not one thing that we can attribute to fathers not being in the lives of children. I mean, we can go through systematic approaches, we can go to individual story approaches, and what I love in this conversation is that it's not bashing men. This is giving them their power back, their true power. Their power is not just to create children. Their power is not to be able to fight and kill and murder. We have a power in leadership. And again, I'm gonna speak from my experience and those around me, and even going to therapy to have this conversation of healing, is that we form bonds with other men who don't have men in their lives. And we're teaching each other how to be men, but we're all boys, we're all the same age. And so when you meet someone, when we meet a woman who is giving us that energy to give us our power back, it comes off as fussing because guess what? Many of us have never had someone love us enough to tell us, I see more in you. We didn't have our mothers. I love my mothers. I'm adopted. I love my mothers. At the same time, there was bits and pieces of my power that I did not have because mom was in protective mode. She was in protection mode versus guiding me into manhood and giving me that direction around other men. And so this conversation is powerful because, and for the men out there, because men you take it personal. We do take it personal. Why? Because we know the trauma that we need to embrace. We know the healing we need to have, and we got to pick up the pieces, even if we didn't mess it up, even if it happened before us. We still have to pick up those pieces. And I'll end with this note: is that when I recognized my last child, my wife dealt with postpartum depression. Never heard of it, never experienced it, never knew what it was until she started sharing me the feelings she had. And at this point, my oldest son was going on 13. There was a whole new game with him, his energy. And so at that moment, I had to make a decision. Was I going to keep building the community up, or was I going to build my family? And I started working from home, which was the hardest thing for me to do in 2019. And even now, doing a lot of contract work and a lot of commission work, it still can be a struggle. However, what I can say is this: I'm there for every moment that my children have. And it gives me a different perspective. Even having a son that's older than my other three, I look now and say, you know what? I could have tweaked this a little bit better. And so instead of beating myself up like what men do, we beat ourselves up, oh, I should have did this, should have did this. I just started implementing what I can do now. And
Right.
so this conversation is powerful.
I love that you said that, talking about what you can do now, because one of the things that kind of spoke to me when Tatiana was talking about the role of a father, I was thinking, we, in a lot of ways, especially in our Black and brown society, we've downplayed the role of a man. We've downplayed him in a lot of in a lot of ways. We do it when we say my baby daddy. That's disrespectful. That's a sign of disrespect. The only reason you're calling him your baby daddy is because you don't respect him. Because if you respected him, you'd be calling him your son's or your child's father. Let's just be clear. So we degrade our men in a lot of different ways, and then on the back end, we expect them to turn around and still come back and stand up in a way that we didn't empower them to do so. Right. So I think that we have to take a little bit of accountability in the way we handle our men if we want them to be active the way we need them to be. When you're talking about, children and you have separate homes, the way some women have handled these fathers and with these child support checks, it's been a thing. They I know some women have made it very hard for men to be fathers. Those that are willing and want to and have the resources to do so, they've made it hard for him to do that because they're no longer together, and it's a personal thing. So again, that goes back to we need to stop being selfish. But I do want to acknowledge that there are circumstances that are created not only by society but also by the women that these men are in relationship with that make it hard for them to be the fathers that they desire to be. And that is an area where we as women have to step up and turn around and get ourselves together so that we're able to co-parent and partner with these men in a better way for the sake of the children.
And I want to add to what you just said, Coach. That is a factor. The women could be a part of that factor. And also, it's generational too. It's a generational curse because you didn't see your dad be a father, or your dad was absent, your grandfather was absent. And so they just repeat the behavior and the cycle just goes on and on. So that could be a factor too. It's not just that the man just wake up and just want to be bad, but he didn't have a role model.
That's right. Okay, so we still people are trying to get on and they're sending me messages, so we're doing technical things as well over here. But that was very good. I think that you all gave very good points, and I'm paying attention. I hear everything you're saying. So let's go to another topic here. Is why is the mother-daughter relationship strained presently? If you all can start that conversation, and then I'll come in and give my piece. Why is the mother-daughter's relationship strained presently?
I so want to start this conversation because I have lived this in my life. So this is right where I am. What I will say is that me being the product of a young mother and father, my mother was 15 years old when she had me. And so, and then my father was 18, but he was blowing in the wind because that's not what he wanted. Be a father is not what he wanted to do. So it left a 15-year-old to contend with being pregnant and to hear all the rhetoric and the commentary from her parent and her grandparents. I can tell you 9 times out of 10, I believe she was completely lost and had no idea what she was supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then she had them telling her, everybody's telling her, you should do this. And we're not really telling her, we're telling her what she should do, but we're also being upset with her because she decided, because she got pregnant at 15, as if they didn't get pregnant when they were 15. I'm just saying, it's a whole generational thing, right? So I think I'm left with a mother who now does not understand what it is to be a mother because she's still a kid. So now I'm bounced around from home to home. And then I get back. Okay, now she's got herself together a little bit. You can go back with your mama because we ain't really never wanted to be bothered with raising a nobody else's kid anyway, because we done raised ours already. So now we have this relationship where I'm in the house with a woman that I don't know, and she doesn't know me. She's in the house raising a child. She'll have no idea how she got to be how she is because she didn't raise her. So now you're having to bridge that gap of getting to know one another again. But who really wants to put that type of time in? I'm the mama, you the child. Do what I say. So we have this war of this tug of war going on because I want you to know me. before you be trying to tell me what to do. You would like to just tell me what to do because you have the title that you have. And I don't know how to respect that because you ain't been here doing it before. I think that's the first thing that creates this whole battle between mother and daughter. I think the second thing is that as daughters get older, the mothers start to see a lot of themselves in their child, and then now it becomes a competition. It becomes a competition. Don't let there be a dad in the house. Now you dad this girl, she upset, she got a little bit jealous with you because he paid more attention to you than he do to her, because that's my man first. And I'm just saying, it sounds crazy, but it's all real and it all happens, okay? And that's why you have this competition. Now, y'all both older, y'all in the same arenas, y'all partying together or separately. Now y'all running in the same circles, meeting the same men, probably trying to date the same men, because if you like me, you like them older. So I like them kind of, closer to my mama age and things. But then again, she's only 15 years older than me, so that makes sense, right? I'm just saying. So now we're dating the same men, checking out the same men. Don't let us be in the same spot together. It's a problem, because now there's competition, because she's got to prove that I'm still got it, and I got to prove, hey, it's my time to get back, right? So if we don't understand who we are before we ever start this growing up process, then we're not going to have the best relationship. If we're going to be rivals, or we're going to be in competition with each other, we're not going to be mother and daughter. That's not going to happen. What we are is a bunch of girlfriends on the street.
Okay,
that's
so
my first take.
Somebody say something? Let me say this. First of all, let's back it up. Now we're bagging it up. Now let's come back forward. I have to say this. A mother is the mother. The daughter is the daughter. And when I talk for what I hear, because the Lord downloads to me what is necessary to pinpoint. We as young girls put too much pressure on our mothers when we get a certain age. Our whole attitude changed, like we got to tell our mothers what to do because we think we know more than them.
Come on.
You have to respect your mother, first and foremost, because she gave birth to you. You didn't give birth to her. So she's the mother, not you. You got to learn how to become a daughter. And learning how to become a daughter, you got to put in the work, just like the mother has to put in the work of learning how to be a better mother to you. And the only way the mother is going to be a better mother to you is having that conversation with you that y'all feel uncomfortable with having. Because sometimes she can't give you what she don't have, but if she conversate with you to find out what you need is necessary, then she can help you and push you further in your life as a young girl. But the attitude of rebellion needs to shift. The thinking you know more than her and that she dumb and she don't have, she already been through some of the things that you just being faced with. So therefore, she may have a little bit more knowledge and wisdom in an area where you just tapping into or you still struggling. So we need to change this. We need to change this narrative, and we need to change it today. So we have to start coming more close. Like, I'm going to just put this out there because I know my daughter is listening, my biological daughter. I love my biological daughter with all that is in me, but society has twisted her thinking on some areas. So I'm not intimidated by that. I say what I got to say and put the P behind the sentence. And I tell my 4 children all the time, I'm going to always win because I'm your mother. I may not have said it all the right way, and I may not have said it the way you like it, but I'm going to tell you what is necessary for you to hear. Because if I get God backing me up, it's going to be full circle and come back around and say, oh, she said that. A lot of times mothers struggle with things that you don't even know about. She ain't even comfortable with talking to you about it because you have already put past judgment or put judgment upon her, prejudging her, present judgment, and then a future judgment is about to come and unfold. So the relationships are strained because 2 people are walking together and they can't agree because one may feel that they need to be heard and the other one need to be heard. One person got to humble themselves enough to listen to the other person, which is a mother-daughter relationship that we're talking about, and then we can make headways, we can make progress, and then we can put Satan in this place and we win together. And we making the devil out of a lie that our relationship with our mother, oh my God, with our mothers do not have to be strained. Now, stop judging your mother because she divorced your father. Then you want to say, well, what did mama do? Maybe mama did something, because I was in a position when I divorced my husband. My husband showed up a different way. He showed up trying to pass the blame like, oh, your mom, your mom, your mom. So I'm sitting there and we having a conversation with the family, and I'm listening, and then I'm looking at him with opening my eyes wider, and I'm putting my hand up under my chin, and I'm tracking my pose and saying, really? So I'm waiting on an opportunity for me to be able to speak, and I said, let me call you out. Since you sit up here with your self-righteous self trying to put a design and create a narrative that's false against me is the reason why we're not together. Let's tell your part. Then he began to cry. Tell your part that would drive me to be able to say I want a divorce. What did you do wrong? So my daughter was judging me, and she was putting pressure on me because I divorced daddy. And I told her, girl, you don't even know all the details of it. You don't even know the different parts of it. So what you need to do is shut up and listen. So mothers, you need to take a bold stand against that spirit from hell that the enemy is launching in the earth, where we can't come together as mothers and daughters and love each other and be there for each other, listen to each other. I'm going to let somebody else speak. I'm a preacher, so I can go on and on. Come on.
I'm going to give you this right quick. I want to give you this quite quick, because I listen to when people, especially when there's divorces happening, kids are forced to take sides. I feel like it, because every parent can sometimes want them to side with them. Kids don't have to choose. They shouldn't have to choose. The parents are parents, they're kids. They shouldn't have to choose. Secondly, I think all children need to probably stay out of grown people's business. This is where we say stay out of grown people's business. And I'm going to tell you, the reason I'm going to say this is this. When you are a child, you are not necessarily supposed to be privy to the relationship between your mother and your father. That is their own private relationship. And as you get to be an adult, I think that you probably need to stay out of their business. Okay? Because why they break up really is not about you. It's about them, because they had a relationship way before you came on the scene. And so you're never going to be privy to all of the information. And rightfully so, you should not be. So I think you need to let their relationship be their relationship, just like you're going to want your relationship with your husband when you get one to, or wife when you get one, to be that. So I encourage all of my friends who talk about their parents getting a divorce, stay out of their relationship and don't choose sides. Those are both your parents. Love both of your parents, and if they happen to break up, they happen to break up, and that is their business.
Sorry, I feel you. I hear you. I have a different perspective because I have a different experience. I'm a child of divorce, and there are things that, I wasn't supposed to see, but I saw them anyway. I saw my parents fighting. I saw them using us as partners between each other, things that you shouldn't do as parents, but I don't hold that against them. That's just where they were at their state of mind, where they were in their emotions at that time, because breaking up, especially in a divorce, especially when there's things involved that led to that got really heated, And so as a child, seeing that, like, okay, how can I trust this love thing? Like, how am I going to know it's going to work out? Because it didn't work out with my parents, you know what I mean? So divorce, I learned later on in my 20s, it is a form of trauma that children experience, whether they didn't see the parents fight, whether they didn't know what the background is to why they broke up, is still a thing that happened to them. And so I think that at some point when the child is of adult age or mature to understand, the parents should be willing to have that conversation with them from a perspective that maybe they can understand, like, this didn't work out because you don't want that child to believe that the core or the primary relationship or foundation that they should be learning romantic relationships from didn't work out. So therefore, it's not going to work out for them. Like, where are they going to learn that from? They need to go back and get at least something to take in so they can see, like, okay, how can I break the cycle? How can I get that? Because a lot of the stuff that happens with our parents is out of our control. And for me, I currently live with my mom, and with our mother-daughter relationship has been strained, but there were things that there were some hesitations that she had that she couldn't share with me till even recently. Like there were some things that I learned about her that allowed me to have more empathy for her instead of prejudging her. Because I'd always be quick to call me out about that years ago, like you're judging your mom. But the reality is, I didn't have understanding of my mom. We did not understand each other because we were both going through whatever it is we had in our backgrounds, but we weren't communicating with each other in a way to provide understanding. So that now that I'm older and I have gone through some therapy and I have some more spiritual maturity about the situation, I can see like, okay, well, my mom may not have this, that, and this. Let me see where I can have that balance or create a balance where there's boundaries, because it can go into a place where you're in a codependent situation, which is dysfunctional. And that happens in a lot of households, in Caribbean households, in Black households, in situations where there has been a divorce. So there's so many different ways that breakups, divorce, single parenthood can affect the mother-daughter relationship. But even when there is a short age gap between the mother and the daughter, you all have to come together and have those conversations and be bold and be humble with each other. We see that on TV now. There's this show called Ginny in Georgia, where this mom raised her daughter at a young age, and so she's coming, the girl is coming her young adulthood, and so she's learning more about her mom and trying to find that balance. So it's not always going to be easy, it's not always going to be uncomfortable, but you have to find that balance where there's boundaries. You honor your parent, but you also have questions. You also want to see, like, what can I, Lord, what can I do to, break this cycle? I don't want to go through, what my mom went through, or what my dad went through. I don't want to have the relationship they had. Some of that healing requires you having to face the stuff that happened before you. So I'm just adding that perspective in there because that hits heavy for me. And honestly, that's one of the reasons why I do what I do, my work for singles ministry, to help others, because I want to see other people have to experience divorce or go through it themselves.
Right. Anybody else want to touch on that?
I just want to say that I can agree with what you said, Prophetess, and Coach. I feel like the dysfunction comes from the mother trying to be in competition with the daughter, living her best life through the daughter, setting no boundaries. So now you got the daughter on the level as your friend. And so now when she come at you, you don't understand, but you've been treating her like she your girl. So, it's dysfunctional. Um, it's sad, and I've seen girls as young as maybe like 11. Sometimes they're going through like puberty where they start challenging their mothers. They don't even understand what's going on in their own body. They're getting attitudes and snapping out. I mean, a lot of my friends are kind of going through this right now. They just like saying that the girls are like monsters, because they don't even understand what's going on inside of them. But I think that the foundation of it is having that strong relationship with God, because the Bible talks about children obeying their parents and talks about how the parents shouldn't provoke the child. And once you get that foundation, then everybody know their place and everybody know their lane, and then we can we can move accordingly. But because of the relationship with God, or I'm not even gonna say some of them don't have relationship with God, but sometimes when things get heated and out of control, that's the last place everybody want to go.
Right.
Everybody want to express themselves, argue, but everybody needs to be heard because it's a place for everybody. So that's my intake on it.
And so, and my thought, I'm not a daughter. Okay. So it's a little, I've been on the outside looking in as a younger brother. I am the youngest of like 8 sisters, one adopted sister. And so having my own daughter, watching her be born, I have 3 sons, 1 daughter, watching my daughter be born, I now understand how women move faster than men because she came out the womb ready. She's ready. She's a Leo too, so she be having one foot in front of the other. She has game plans already made, and so just like what Julia was just sharing, literally, it goes back to what our first question was about, that father figure. When you got both of those energies together, they offset each other, and so
Right.
when you have that that back and forth with mother and daughter, which I see happen with my wife and my daughter, because my daughter is very opinionated. She's very forward thinking. She's very independent, wants to do on her own. Mom and her, hey, what are you doing? Where the boys are dependent. They mama's boys, they mama's babies. So she can tell them something and they going on a happy way. And so when you don't have that balance, you see that mother and daughter becoming friends versus that mother-daughter, because mom may have went through a situation where she didn't have a mother figure. And so she wants to give her daughter something that she didn't have. And so that conversation of mother and daughter has to stay mother and daughter, because when you become trying to put it even, the daughter will challenge you. They're going to children in general. It's not just daughters. They will challenge you, and in that challenging, you begin to have that back and forth. And so that balance of that difficult conversation, being respectful, watching my wife and her mother's relationship and conversation, may she rest in peace. There were hard conversations, but when she got old enough to ask those questions to her mom, they got answered, and there was tears, it was arguments, it was indifferences, because as prophet has just said, as mom, I'm doing something that you have no idea that I'm doing. You have no idea what I'm going through. And when you don't want to share that with your child, the child who looks to be understood or find understanding, they don't always see it. And so that dialogue can help bringing that male presence back, bringing fathers into the mix, because that brings that balance. Because I'll step in and have a conversation with my daughter real quick, and it's a daddy-daughter conversation. And so that's just my 2 cents.
That's
And let me
good.
just add this real quick. I'm sorry. So I am the fourth daughter out of 8. My mother has 11 children, and it's 8 girls. It wasn't we was raised by 5 different people. She literally, my mother and father, raised us. So it's all about choice. It's all about, how did my mother raise 8 girls under one roof? It was about relationship. The relationship started when we were in the womb. It didn't just start when we were 16 and 15. It started from day one. We knew who the mother was. We never got it twisted. So mothers have to stand up and get that backbone, because a lot of the children, they'll challenge because, my mother didn't do the things that we're doing now because she was busy raising us. So it was an incident I can remember that I felt like, my mother was feeling some type of way about me. It was like in my senior year of high school, I was going on prom, and she didn't see me off. And I couldn't understand, why didn't my mother come see me off for prom? We're in the same house. It's like she came to the door and she just like slammed the door. And so that set up a spirit of rejection for me. And I never said nothing all these years. And then one day I finally asked her, like, Mom, why did you do that when I was going on prom? And she told me she had some of the worst cases of menopause. And if I would have asked her that question back then, I would have understood. But instead, I let rejection set up in me. And I started feeling rejected and overlooked and not so much loved and wanted attention and started feeling some type of way, when all I had to do, because the relationship was already there, all I had to do was just ask. So it's like, keeping that communication going with your mom, um, especially if it's something wrong, you should always be able to talk. And if you feel like you can't talk, then get a mediator. But don't let it sit like I sat, because I suffered for a while dealing with that rejection until
Wow.
I found out, what happened.
I
That's
see
good.
somebody. I'm sorry. Somebody says on here, people, mothers are raising their daughters out of trauma and emotional um, status, which is true. That's Brenda Smith says that. So
I agree 100%. I want to piggyback on what Julia said, because I think the most therapeutic thing that I did to repair the relationship with me and my mother was I wrote her a letter. And I will be real candid. That letter was not nice. I said any and everything I thought I was bad enough to say, because I wanted to get it all out, because you're going to need to know, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I knew that we weren't going to be able to ever have that conversation face to face, because she was not going to let me finish,
Right.
right? So I wrote the letter. I'm like, you're going to read it today because you're going to know. And
mm,
I put it in the mail. Now, she shared this letter with her mother, and her mother was just, she was like, I can't believe she wrote this to me. She was cussing and everything. And my grandmother was like, well, I don't know what you want her to do. I mean, you don't be listening to her when she be talking. So she had no choice but to write this letter. She's like, and when you do, she said, you got to be accountable for what you do. When you treat people a certain way, you think they're not going to never have nothing to say? Because they are, right? And so she's like, oh, well, deal with it. But and I remember she called me and left the voicemail and said, well, if I did those things, then I am truly sorry. And I was upset. What you mean if? When the fact that if I will really, I'm ready to fall out. I'm upset now. If because what that felt like to me was that felt like you were just basically saying, I don't believe in nothing that you're saying, but if that's what you say, then oh well. I guess I'll go ahead and apologize, right? But you're still not taking any accountability for anything that I am talking about. I didn't make these things up, right?
Well, she probably would have received you better and gave you a different response had you not cussed her out.
I agree. I 100% agree. I was younger. I didn't know. I was younger. I thought I had it together. That's what I wanted to do. Right. But what I will tell you is that it opened up the door for her to understand that now that I am an adult, we have to be able to have an adult conversation because you can't treat me like I am a kid. I'm not a kid. I'm an adult, and so we have to communicate like adults. Today, our relationship is everything, okay? But that's because she respects me as a woman, not just her daughter. I'm respected as a woman, just like she is. But we both understand she's my mother and I am her daughter, and I respect her as such. Mm-hmm. Even when I don't agree with what she does or how she does it or what she says, I understand that that's my mother, right? So, but that I think that had I never wrote this letter, I don't know if we would be here. Because right. I feel like some of the trauma that we have in these strained relationships with our parents is because once we get to be an adult, they don't remember that we're an adult. They treat us like we're still kids. And then that kind of causes a problem. And I think you have to level set. And once you level set, I think you can kind of go back and have the relationship you're supposed to have. You know what I mean?
Right. That's twofold because some children want to be treated like.
I was gonna say that. I want to be treated like a kid sometimes.
Right. So you still acting like a kid.
I want to go sit on my mama's lap
as an adult. Right. So it's twofold. We're still talking about. Let's not get off that subject. We're talking about mother-daughter relationships being strained. Mm-hmm. If you are taking on the form of a woman, then there's attributes that comes with that. So don't try to shove your womanhood in your mother's face and you ain't even apprehend being a woman.
Amen.
And you will always be your mother.
Because there's an in-depth responsibility that come with that. Now, I'm grown now. I'm an adult. No. I've had that too. Said that to me. Mama, we grown. No. Grown's definition does not spell what y'all showing me or trying to tell me. So I can treat you different when you show me the fruits of being an adult or being a woman.
Absolutely. I agree 100% because when I wrote that letter, I was doing all things for myself and I was handling it. So I didn't write that letter when I was 19 playing around still trying to need help. Let's just be clear. So I understand exactly what you mean. I don't think I would have had no right to write half of the letter that I wrote if I was still dependent on somebody. So I was not. So I was very, very clear about that. And I agree with you. I think that if you're going to act like a child, then you can't be surprised when somebody treats you like one.
That's right.
In this conversation too, and I was raised by one of the strongest mamas, because she's my mama, that I can imagine going where she's gone through 8th grade education, being abused to the point where she couldn't have children. She has so much in her story that, again, and I know we're talking mothers and daughters, when her interaction with me was she wanted the best for me and she did what she felt was best for me. However, the wounded, adopted, whole field young man that I had, she wasn't addressing those particular conversations. And so what I've seen, even as a parent myself, talking to my son or working with other children, or even having the conversation with my mom as an adult, because I cussed at my mama once, and boy, she was having surgery, and I said a bad word, And man, she must have got up so fast, you would have thought she didn't need surgery. But the conversation is that I think that as adults, we either dismiss the fact that children they feel, they have feelings, they have emotions, as the word says, for parents not to provoke children, which means that we parents, we could do things that can harm the relationship between us and our children.
That's
So we
true.
have a power that we have to acknowledge. And so sometimes for me, I have to step back, and when I have has snapped on something where I thought my son had did something, I gotta say I'm sorry. And by me doing that, opened up a door for him to be able to have mistakes and be able to say, okay, dad, this is what I did. Early on as a parent, I took on what my mother did, which was instant action, instant discipline, instant punishment, instant go to your room. And there was no conversation. The teacher was right, I was wrong. There was no dialogue. And so what that made me feel is if I was not able to be heard, I was not able to have an advocate with me, because if an adult said I did wrong, then I did wrong. And so I think as we're having this great conversation with mothers and daughters, just seeing my wife and her mother have conversation. They had a relationship, that's their story, and that's for her to tell. At the same time, I've watched them in the years we've been together before she passed away get closer and closer, because they had some real tough conversations. And my wife will ask her, well, why didn't you this? And my mother-in-law would be like, well, this was going on, this, and this. And my wife's face would be in shock, because for her, you're my mom. You're there. You're my up, and then I get that you want, as a kid, you want to know why. And
Right.
so not saying, and going back to what Prophet Ottawa said, we don't, parents don't necessarily owe children answers. We're doing what we got to do, what we've been asked to do by God. So we can't always tell you the why. At the same
That's the
time, I
truth.
think there are moments where we can bring our children and have those conversations, because a lot of children are smarter than we think. And so bring them into the mix, give them a better relationship, because again, what strains these relationships and causes dysfunction is the way that we handle. Because for years, I struggled with women. I struggled with my relationships with women, because my first real relationship with women came from my mother. And so for young ladies, when they have combated energy with their mothers, that energy will go into the other relationship with other women, because I've had to fight with my mama. Now I'm fighting with other women. And so these conversations is how we're going to, I love the phrase, Prophetess, you said, we're going to change the narrative. Mamas and daughters ain't arguing no more. They're
Right.
both doing the same thing. These are women are God's vessels to bring in forth life, and they both have the power. And when you know your power together, you're able to walk together the right way.
That's good. And you know what I had to, we're going to get off this subject because what I did on my approach with my children, they told me I wasn't affectionate enough. So that was one of the components that was missing. So what I do now, I help and assist. I hug my daughter more. When I see her, I hug her. I say, hey, my baby girl. Hey, mom. I'm speaking to her differently, even though she's 29. And I love that little girl. She's very creative to me. She's different. She's beautiful. So I talk to her different, and I try to make sure that I listen to her more and spend more time with her. Yet I'm not just her biological mom. I'm a spiritual mom to her as well. So I play two different roles in the life of all four of my children. So this was good. This was good. So we hope for those of you all that have heard this piece, and you can go back and hear it later, that there's something that you can glean from this conversation and take with. So the relationship between you and your mother that's strained would not be an issue anymore, but a byword in your mouth. And we're going to just continue these conversations in days to come and revisit some of these things, because I know this is just one of many conversations that we're going to have. And I'm so excited about this. Okay, so let's go to number 3. Why are mothers struggling to embrace their sons? Go ahead, Kent.
Whew. Again, I'm adopted, so my situation is a little bit different. However, having the trauma bonding with other male friends, having female friends, having my sisters, oftentimes those sons remind them of the father.
Mm-hmm.
Mannerisms, facial expressions, body language, because technically he is the is a carbon copy of the original. So that memory, that reminder, usually causes that indifference. And then I will also add, and this is again just if we look at our culture, if we look at our society as Black and brown people, that when it came to taking dysfunction in the household, it started 1619 allegedly, when we were brought over in bondage, or those who are already here were put into bondage, where the man was ripped away from the family, where the mothers were left alone with the children by themselves. So this is years and years and years and years of practice. And so when that young man begins to grow, he also becomes a target to what society is going to bring to him. And so mothers will put a lid to keep that young man safe, unknown to her, creating a coddling effect, so that now that young man becomes a man, and that man is still behaving like a boy. And
Mm.
now that boy is causing that same issue that, if again, it's not for every case with fathers not being present, but that action begins to mirror the actions of that father who was not present. And so it goes back to the conversation we just had, having that dialogue. My mother did not know me. She even told me she was sick. She was on a hospital bed and she was getting ready to pass away. And I just told her like all these things. I used to tell her for years, you made me feel like I was nothing. Like I was adopted and went to a space. I might as well stay with my biological family. And she told me, she said, Kent, at 2.5, when I've got you, I saw in your eyes that you had a strength and you had a fire about you. And it almost made me afraid. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, what is you talking about? And as years went on, she's passed. It's been 10 years coming in October. I now understand what she said. She was saying she knew that I was going to be okay. She was just fine tuning me in the ways that she knew how, because she's a woman. She doesn't know how to tell a boy or show a boy how to be a man, but she did what she felt she needed to do. But our relationship was so strained because like you just said, prophetess, I needed affection. I felt unwanted. If my blood didn't want me, who else would ever want me?
Right.
However, in her eyes, she saw somebody powerful in the making. So she saw who I am now before I could. And so she did what she thought she needed to do. And we have to have these conversations. We got to get these hard conversations, and we got to get these young boys in front of men,
That's
quality
true.
men, so that they can bridge the gap on how a young man interacts with his mother.
Right. And you know what? I don't have a struggle with I love my boys, and I don't have a struggle with embracing my kids, my sons. I did it once with one of my children, but I've passed that because I've allowed God to consume the things that I struggle with in prayer. So God freed my heart up more, where I was able to just deal with some issues of the situations and stuff I didn't agree with, and I just walk in love with them because it was just a choice and a decision. Can somebody respond to Tanika? Toria did. She said, "Awesome, but I need some words spoken."
Oh, I can respond. So Tanika said, I had conversations with my mother before she passed. Some things she answered, some things I realized she didn't understand herself. That allowed me to give her some grace. And I do agree wholeheartedly. I think at some point, as you become an adult, you have to, and you start living your own life and you start to see the struggles and start to experience some of the same things, then you start to understand how it must have felt, how she must have felt in some of those instances if you're putting yourself in her shoes. And then that way you're able to have a little bit of empathy and you're able to extend grace because even for me, my mother was 15 years old when she had me. I can imagine that she was terrified and just had no idea what to do with me. And I think that was play a big part in her ability to be available for me and to really, really establish relationship with me from the very beginning. And I
Yeah.
think that story is not unique to me. I think it's a lot of different mothers, even if they had them from the start. It's sometimes depending on what you're going through, you don't have the tools or the presence of mind to start that relationship on the right footing. Okay. And if that's the case, then as you get older as an adult, you have to kind of understand that and give some grace for that. So I totally agree. And I think that we as daughters should probably practice trying to understand who our mothers were and what the struggles that they dealt with so that we can have a better appreciation for what they did do versus always talking about what they didn't do, how they messed up, and what they missed out on.
That's
Let's give
good.
credit where credit
Thank
is due.
That's good. Totally good response. Anyone else? Okay, so let's move on. Julia or Tati, did you all want to say something about the embrace? Why are mothers struggling to embrace their sons?
Yeah, I want to say I've seen on my end where the mother is so into the son, they're into the boys as if the boys are their husband, and the boy want to break away. He wants a relationship with a woman outside of the mother, and so it's like really a breakup, and the mother don't want to let go, and the boy, wants to get away so he can start his own family, and
Oh,
so this causes a whole big um dysfunctional mess. So
right,
I've seen that a lot lately, like seriously.
Yeah, I
wow.
agree. That's a phenomenon because I've seen it in a couple of young marriages, and I'm like,
Yes.
ooh, if your mama just lets you go, y'all might make it. Jesus,
Oh
y'all
my
might
God.
make it. If she lets you go, y'all, you're gonna be an awesome husband. If she lets you go, I have seen. No, literally, I have seen these men have to like break up, and the
Oh
breakup
my
be
God.
hard. The breakup be like devastating, not for him, for her.
Yes.
I'm like, you need to go get you a life.
Yes.
The breakup shouldn't be that hard for you. Like it should not. It shouldn't be that hard because you had to know this day was gonna come.
Exactly.
I mean, I watched this lady cry so hard when her son got married. I thought somebody died.
Mm-hmm.
I was like,
Wow.
all he did was give me.
Well,
I'm
honey,
losing
all
my
man can be
son.
married. I got one that's married, and
Right.
trust me.
She said, I'm
Thank you.
losing my son. I'm losing my son. I'm like, girl, you ain't losing your son. You getting a whole daughter-in-law.
Let me
Perfect.
say, like,
Yeah.
remember
So we got a
in the
comment from
house,
Brenda. She says that we have to extend grace because we don't know all the details of everyone's story. Anybody want to comment on that?
I agree. It takes the mom to be willing to tell the story, right? Like, it's not always, on the daughter because she might not know, but it's a mutual work that needs to be done. Like you as a woman need to understand, like your mom may not have it all together, but you have to be willing to ask questions and gauge the temperature of when's the right time to ask the questions. And the mom should also be open and available to answer some questions, to share her story. Because if you have girlfriends that you can share your story to, if you're relaying, you're still teaching your child from what you've been through, what you learned through your mistakes or your great decisions. Those are still lessons that a child may need to hear so that they can have those building blocks to, carve out their own path. And um, it takes grace for both people in the relationship, the mother to the daughter, the daughter to the mother. And that's, we need that mutual respect. Um, for the for the mother and son situation, it reminded me of that movie Jumping the Broom that came out a while ago because
Yeah.
the man was getting married and he had to step in and know this, this is what's going to happen, and she had to accept that. But that was a tough conversation that they had to have in a short amount of time because it's a movie and because it was like the day before the wedding, basically. But they had to have that hard conversation. Like, I gotta leave in Cleveland. This is what the Bible says. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm gonna start a new life, and you have to. We all have to make adjustments. It's not just the mom that makes adjustments. It's the son too. He's creating a new family, and he's gonna need his mom in some aspects, but not in the same way. So it's just a changing and adjustment that everybody has to
I think Brenda's
be
thing.
willing
She
to.
hasn't home.
Huh?
Okay, so uh, Brenda is making another claim. So can somebody respond to that one?
I want to
Um,
say something about her last claim about where we need to extend grace, and I think a lot of times, a lot of people grew up in the era where everybody brushed things under a rug. the rug is holding so many secrets. Nobody wants to talk about anything. It's all under the rug. So people respond to the behaviors that they see. They're responding to the treatment that they're getting. And so that the lack of grace is not there because they only responded to the behaviors.
That's true.
And so this next comment that whoever wants to address this can. It says, "Mothers, your sons are not your husband." Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped one. The first one says, "But the men have to leave and cleave, but the son and mama relationship be so strong that the root has to be broken." And then I'm going to read the
Amen.
next one also. It says, "Mothers, your sons are not your husband." And I had to adjust to that concept with my sons and with my husband being a mama's boy. Now, anybody want to address that in regards to being mama's boys and the relationship needing to be broken?
I love how Brenda has acknowledged that she had to make an adjustment, because I think a lot of times mothers tend to either be unaware that there's this unhealthy attachment, or they justify this unhealthy attachment with, that's my son and I'm gonna always be his mom and he gonna always be my baby, right? uh, so I think the awareness is the first key. If I can be aware of the fact that I am holding on to him in a way that I shouldn't be, and I do have to make an adjustment, is your first key. I think once you realize that, then you understand, then it makes it easier for you to do those things that you need to do in order to break that attachment, so that it becomes healthy in a way that you're able to participate in as a part of the structure for family and children for them, right? Because what you're really doing is you should be trying to create a space where you become the like forerunner, father grandfather's relationships, so that these young people who are starting out and venturing out into a marriage and building a family has something to go on, something to grow from, someone they can ask questions and get information from, so that they're able to sustain the relationships that they're now entering into. It's one thing to say, oh yeah, good, let's go ahead on and get married, watch them get married and send them off, bon voyage and throw rice. But that's not enough. That don't sustain nobody. That doesn't help. So you're gonna have to find you another tool. Go read you a book or something. Because maybe if you were never married, go read you a book so you can figure out how you need to help these kids out. Because you can't just be a grandmama and all you do is keep the kids. That ain't gonna work out. They need you to talk. And they need you to give wisdom, not just to the children, but to them. They're adults, but they still need you.
And I also believe that there's a thin line between an unconditional mother's love and an unhealthy soul tie with your son. You can develop an unhealthy soul tie, and it has to be severed, because that's not normal. It's not normal.
Factual. That is factual. Prophetess, you're on mute if you're speaking to us. You still on mute, Prophetess.
Still on mute.
Can you hear me now?
There we go.
Yes.
Let's talk about number 4. What are some root causes of a dysfunctional marriage? We're going to pinpoint some things. Let's talk about it.
Well,
I go first. I got 5,000 friends, and I'm gonna have to get deep.
I would say some of the things that we talked about so far can contribute to a dysfunctional marriage. It starts off before you marry, and you bring all these dysfunctions to that altar, and you marry with them. Unresolved issues, childhood traumas, absence of a father. All of those things can contribute to a dysfunctional marriage.
True.
Might say trauma.
Trauma.
And they contribute because you're now looking to get married to fill that void.
Come on.
Versus getting married for the reason you're to get married. And I was told that, by one of my mentors, he was like, man, how your small business going? And I was like, man, I'm doing good. I got shirts. I'm speaking now. I co-author books. He was like, no, I'm talking about the Wade household. And I was like, what you mean? He was like, that's the first small business you're operating. You and your wife are partners operating this system called the Wade household. And it really was like a gut punch because I'm like, I love her, we're friends first, and we had that foundation. At the same time, there was some trauma, as Julia just mentioned, that we both brought to the table, but we didn't bring it to the table to create what the future is going to look like. You don't get married for the love and feel goods. Well, that's positive, and it's a piece of it. You're getting married and connecting to as one to grow the future. And I think a lot of people get married with a lot of that baggage that Julia just shared and what we talked about. But they're looking to get married because I got a husband, I got a wife, I got this. And they have this false narrative. Again, going back to what I love the word prophetess used earlier, the narrative, false narrative. I want this person to pay all the bills, or I want this person to clean and cook and do this. And so this is how they're approaching marriage. And then when they have those struggles in marriage, now they're ready to hit that panic button and they're ready to leave, which is not supposed to be negotiable when it comes to marriage.
Oh my goodness. I love how you put that, Kent, because and I'm not married. So just make that clear. I'm not married, but I have a little bit of good sense. So I'm gonna share with you what I think I know.
Come on, sorry, let's go.
And I hope to be married one day. I'm planning on it, so I'm trying to get myself all the way together. I'm working on me. But one of the things that I have realized is that people get married. It's like when people get together, they don't have these crucial conversations with each other about what their expectations are. Because what I am realizing is that my expectation of you as just a friend boy, is different than my expectation of you as my boyfriend. My expectation of you as my boyfriend is different than my expectation of you as my fiance. My expectation of you as my fiance is different from my expectation of you as my husband. My expectation of you as my husband is different from my expectation of you as the father of my children. It changes. It's decompartmentalized. It's in categories, the expectations. And what I find is that people don't have those crucial conversations about what those expectations are, and we assume that the other person knows because they know me. They've been knowing me all. We've been together for 5-6 years. How could they not know? Let's just be clear. Nobody's mind readers. You're not telepathic. That's how come they don't know. They don't know because you didn't tell them.
Right.
And this whole thing, when you say I expect them to know, or I expect her to know, because how could they not know me because we've been together so long? That don't mean y'all talked about that. So how am I supposed to know that? This is the one thing this is a running thing I have in all of my relationships. When a person does something that Toria does not like, the first thing I say is, you know what? This is not entirely your fault because I didn't set the expectation. I forgot to let you know that I don't like that. So now let me serve notice and let you know I don't like that. So now we have an understanding that we both know I don't like it. So the next time you do it, I'm going to take it as blatant disrespect because we had this conversation already, right? But I feel like we take it as blatant disrespect before we ever have the conversation and level set anything. I think we have to start having crucial conversations. Y'all run around here talking about, I'm going to go to marriage counseling, and then y'all get in front of the marriage counselors and y'all lie about what the real issues are. When they ask you what's going on, everything is fine. Well, we know exactly how to do that. No, you don't have no clue.
So you
passing the blame and be lost, and then now y'all at odds, and you wonder why you in this marriage 6 months in, and we was doing fine before we got married. That's because y'all didn't talk about what the expectation was. Well, I don't understand why we have it because y'all didn't talk about it.
Up front, you gotta tell them up front. I tell them up front. You gotta know up front.
You got to.
Where's I had an echo?
I don't know why we have an echo, but
we get it off now. But
nobody
tell them up front. Come on, we can clap on there like we in church. Hallelujah. That's Jesus. I'm telling you. So if they forget or get some amnesia, you can say, no, I told you up front.
Exactly, because see what's happening is people are not having amnesia about how to show up in these relationships. They don't know.
Facts.
They're
And
not
that's
having
where
that need that they don't know already. They never knew because you never told them. So the first thing you need to do is make sure you are having these conversations before you say I do, not afterwards. Before, because maybe if you had some of these conversations before you said I do, maybe you wouldn't say I do.
that's why that
And that's
pre-marriage
how y'all
counseling.
Excellent. No,
That's
that's
why that
excellent points. I want to add a couple of comments before we get too far down them. So a next comment says to stop saying that this is just how I am without understanding why your actions are confusing or upsetting to your partner, and that you're not willing to address the issues through communication and action. That you need to get healed and not just say this is just how I am. I'll let somebody comment on that one, and then we'll go to the next one.
So I'm gonna say this because this is right in my judge. I always tell people you cannot expect for your relationships with other people to flourish and grow if you are not going to work on yourself. If you are going to bring the same selfish person or the same whatever your issue is into every relationship that you go in, then I'm gonna tell you, you the common denomination as to why it's not working. I had the one person I know he'd been married 6 times. This is number 7. And and every before number 7 happened, I said to him, I said, why do you keep getting married if this is gonna be the outcome? And he said to me, because I keep thinking it's gonna be different. And I said to him, was you ever different in any of these relationships? What did you do differently than when you walked into number 2, number 3?
Dysfunctional. Go ahead. I'm just
your same self, and you showed up your same self in all 6 relationships and wonder why they failed. You the common denomination ain't them. It's 6 different women. It's you.
Okay, it's getting heated up now. It's getting heated.
Yeah.
With that grocery shopping now, y'all. It's getting heated. Let me mute it. Come on, somebody else speak to that.
Y'all know, look, anybody know me know I don't come to play. I'm not sugarcoating nothing.
I need to get
if you are dysfunctional, then that's what's
Keep
going to
it
happen.
smooth. Keep it smooth is on here, y'all. Come on, y'all. Come on.
I love that what you said, Tori, about us needing to work on ourselves. And it's so key, like, especially in dating and singleness and relationships, we just go kind of on autopilot and we just live our life without really investing in ourselves to do that inner work that's needed for us to have a successful relationship. Let's just put all the I didn't have a role model for a good marriage stuff on the back burner. Okay? We live in an information age where all kind of stuff is available at your fingertips through books, through YouTube videos, through podcasts, through discussions like these, where you can get the resources and help that you need to and accountability to learn about yourself. If you don't have a mentor, get an internet mentor and learn from people that you want who have a lifestyle that is similar to what you are desiring. If you want to be a godly wife or a godly husband, go find that online and follow that person and learn from them. There's plenty of them. I listen to them often. If you have, on a practical sense, we need to also let go of this idea about we depending too much on these little personality tests and horoscopes to figure out if we're compatible with somebody. Baby, figure out your emotional attachment style.
right.
Because a lot of us, that core of the communication issue, which is the reason why a lot of relationships and marriages are dysfunctional, is because we don't have proper communication. And a lot of that is tied to our emotional immaturity or what we didn't get enough of when we were coming up. And so you got to figure that out. Like for me, I figured out oh, I'm not as emotionally available as I claim I am or claim that I want in a partner. So how can you be wanting someone who's emotionally available if you don't even know what that means? Like if you run away at the slightest issue and not be willing to work it out. Like listen, I tell you, I was a runner, I was a track star. I was running away from situations. Sometimes it didn't work out because that was not God's plan. But sometimes you do have to face certain trials and tribulations to navigate how to approach the situation, because life happens even if you have the healthiest, happiest marriage. How are you going to handle those situations? So if you are listening, if you're watching, Google emotional attachment styles or something along the lines of that and learn where you are, because there's secure attachment, which is the healthiest form. There's avoidant, there's fearful avoidant, there's anxious attachment styles. And so it can be a mirror to where you're at in this season. I'm not saying this is all you'll ever be, but it's good to have an understanding of, oh, this is why this is me. This is my pattern of why I approach this person, or why I entertain that person, or why this marriage didn't work out. You have to like look at your role in the relationship and what didn't work out and what did work out. And what didn't work out, what can be adjusted and changed and improved so you can show up in the next relationship better and stronger. That's why these divorce rates, especially for people who marry after divorce, like the percentages get higher for their divorce after the second time, the third time, etc., because a lot of times they go in it too quickly. They didn't do that inner work, that inner healing to understand where they need to be to get to a healthier place, a more secure place in their next relationship.
Hey, and
I
people
think that's
can.
I
excellent
totally
points,
agree.
Tati. And it feeds right into Tanika's comment that we're going to go to next, which she says that, yes, unresolved childhood issues and trauma, seeing your spouse as someone that's not going to do like they did you, not knowing how to show love freely. So who wants to address Tanika's comment?
I can address it.
And then we have another
Um,
comment right after y'all. So get y'all
so
comments in.
so pretty much piggybacking off of Tatanik, was it? I'm
Uh,
sorry. I'll
I
call
don't,
you Miss T.
it's okay.
Piggybacking off of her. Okay, you looking at somebody who literally, I'm divorced. I was married for 12 years. And after that, I was going into relationships too quick. And so unresolved issues from that marriage start showing up in those relationships. And so it wasn't me that worked on me. It was God that had to work on me. Because if I worked on me, I would have missed 10 more things about me. Because let's admit, we don't want to work on us. So I had to literally sit down and allow God to heal me from childhood traumas, allow God to heal me from bad relationships and what took place in that marriage. And it took 10 years. And I said, wow, was I that bad? It's because I wouldn't surrender to the work. Every time I thought I was ready, I would go back in and I wasn't ready yet. And so God set me down. And in that sitting, now I'm healed. Now I'm in my season of being found. Now I can bring something healthy to the table instead of all that toxic stuff that I was bringing. And so all those walls, I was just telling somebody the other day, I had so many layers of brick walls that God had to break down and chisel away, stuff that I didn't even know was there. Everything wasn't connected just to a man. It was just stuff about Julia. So when you can do that, when you can be honest, when you can be patient and allow God to do the work, then you can have a healthy marriage. Then you can have a healthy relationship. But it won't take place until then. And you can't stop your process. I don't care if it's taking 10 years, 5 years. You can't stop it. Only God can tell you when that season is up. I used to be in an atmosphere where single men would be everywhere. Nobody would look at me. Nobody would say nothing to Julia because God had me in a season of being hidden so that the work can be done. I couldn't come out prematurely again. So if you take it like that, then you'll be successful.
Pass
Let
that
God
collection plate.
do it.
I'm so resonating with you, Pastor Julia. Yes, I've been there. I'm there. Yes.
So thank you, Julia, too. There's two comments that are addressing marital counseling. I'm going to read both of them, and then whoever wants to talk about marriage counseling as it relates to what these users are saying. So the first person says, I had a discussion with a friend on premarital counseling. They were 100% not for it, while I thought or think it's necessary. Do you think premarital counseling can help with trauma as witnessing your parents' divorce that might not have come up in the relationship and may have come up once married? Is it beneficial? Then Keep It Smooth says marriage counseling is only effective when you utilize the teachings you gain. Some people just going through the motions because they got married for the title and they wonder why they are struggling.
Keeping it smooth, keeping it smooth,
Yes.
keeping it real, keeping it smooth. I totally agree with you 100% because I'm going to tell you something. The Bible does tell us, despise not counseling. But when it says counseling, that's the real stuff. Because I'm going to tell you something. Most married couples that go to these counselors, they already coming there where both sides is offended by something and they ready to attack each other. So the man or the woman that's in the middle as the counselor, they're not getting through to neither one of them because they got to be so skillful to get their attention. you have to deal with it on a more biblical level. I understand that, but in
Yes.
these days, counseling ain't helping you when you dealing with what a lot of carnal stuff, because they already got their mind set up that they pissed off with you because of what you did, or you did this and you did, accusing each other, and there's no middle ground. So counseling to me does not work unless both parties really are godly.
Come on.
Both parties understand what the Bible says about it, what God says. Both parties understand the foundational piece of why marriage is important in the eyes of God. Not marrying for convenience.
Come on.
Not marrying because of what they're able to give to you. You marrying a gold digger and a she digger, gold digger too. It's a lot of variables to consider that's bringing about dysfunctional relationships. The man is a cheater. He's a silent whore, hiding that he ain't really out there or looking at somebody else. You done already committed adultery if you done fantasize about another woman, or you looking at porn. That's dysfunctional. I'm still talking about counseling, because all things considered, counseling does not work unless you love each other unconditionally enough to want the marriage to work and not be accusatory. You got to have enough love for the individual to say, look, we're going to put Satan in his place in our marriage. We're going to go to counsel together. You have to already have an agreement before you even enter into the room for counseling.
Come on. That's it.
I agree.
The Bible says two walk together except they agree. So you got to agree on everything. I'm going to tell you something. That's why I'm in the season. I'm letting you know up front. I can show y'all some text. I'm serious. I'm animated, but I'm telling you the truth. I'm for real, for real. I told this guy gonna tell me, but I'm serious about you, and I've been waiting 2 months for this Jack. Oh, I was gonna say something wrong. Oh, for this Jack to say we're gonna go to the movies, or we're gonna no. First of all, when you start off wrong, you end wrong. Okay, so we would have been in counseling. We would have been up there with the Pope, with the rabbi, and everybody else, and I would have slamming mud, because I'm gonna take you back to the beginning for what you promised. You weren't a promise keeper. First of all,
come on.
Yeah, she could be a promise keeper too. So we ain't gonna just put all the emphasis on a man.
Come on.
So that's the reason why we're having a lot of dysfunctional relationships in the marriage, and black love is one of the biggest ones. Because black men and black women, we need to get a clue on what marriage is supposed to be looking like in the eyes of God.
Woo!
Because I'm gonna tell y'all, black men and black women, y'all got it. Some of our black women, your standards is too high. Sweetie, bring it on down, because it don't take all that. You want him to put in all the work, and you ain't gonna put in no work too, sister? It's a twofold thing in a marriage, and we can have a lot more prosperous marriages and relationships if we will learn how to pause for station identification and learn how to love each other, and we can be good partners, we can be best friends, and we can be the epitome of a prosperous marriage if we will learn how to consider our ways like the Bible tells us. Am I preaching the word of God? Has revival started for these marriages? The Facebook, oh my God, should be lit up right now, because we need to get some deliverance. The time is now.
Well, now, let me
Jesus, hallelujah! Should I start shouting? Because I got more to say, but I be sitting here. I'm just gonna wait. Come on.
I'm almost ready to shout with you, but I will say this. I do believe that there is a value in having premarital counseling. No, I am not married, but I am a wedding officiant. So I do premarital counseling, because I just give you, pillars, right? But one of the things that I realize, even when I'm doing that, is that if they already have, I'm with her, they already have a preconceived notion about how they want it to be, and they're not going to be open to really learning the tools, the foundational tools that you need, then it's what you wasted my time. But I guess I'm all right, because you paid me, but you just paid for nothing, is what I'm saying, right? So I want people, if you're gonna take the time to pay for counseling, because it's not cheap, then you should probably be getting all you can get out of it, okay? Because just because you don't get nothing out of it, they don't give you no refunds. Okay.
That's right.
Look, the last time I went to anybody's counseling, I had a whole list, because we're going to talk about it all today and the next 3 days, the next 5-4 times I come see you. We're going to get this under wraps. We're going to get it under control. And I think that if you're not going to apply what they give you, then why are you wasting time. If you just trying to check off a checklist of things you're supposed to do before you get married, or you just trying to check off a list of things that you need to do before you go on and get a divorce, because they usually make you go through counseling before they award a divorce. I'm just saying, if that's the only reason you're doing it, miss it.
So
Excellent,
having
excellent point. And I want, before you go, Kim, I just want to throw in the 2 cents that Tanika said that's super important to what everybody's saying about counseling is that it matters who your counselor is. They need to have
Yes.
the same principles that you have. They need to believe what you believe. You cannot just have anybody as a counselor and think it's going to work out for your union. Go ahead, Kim.
And a single woman, you can't give no counselor, or a single man, you can't give
That's
no
right.
mental counselor. You can just deal with what's on the surface because you ain't lived it and you ain't been through that journey. Go ahead, Kim.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
and having so me and my wife, will be 9 years in September. We had to do counseling via our officiant. He never married anyone unless they went through a certain amount of weeks of premarital
Absolutely.
counseling. And so for us, in our conversation of marriage, because we were friends before anything, so the whole relationship factor kind of rolled itself into it. So we were like, yeah, let's do it. Let's figure this thing out and dive into things a little bit more. And so uh, just what Restore just said, what Tanika said, is that again, your counselor cannot be anyone. It cannot be. We make the mistake of going to friends and family members and church members or people that knew us when we were kids, and people who may not say it, but they're biased.
Mhm.
They're biased. And so, with that being said, for us and for our marriage, which in the 9 years has been up, down, round and round, upside down, through the water, in space, in the jungle. We go back to the foundations of what our premarital counseling, what we went through, the different pillars, the different conversations, even the realness that our pastor even just told us flat out, like just was real with us about what marriage is like. And he was married at that time for going on 40 years. And so the realness of saying, you think when you get married, you're not going to see another attractive man or woman. And we're sitting there looking at each other like, well, how do we answer this question? And so we just honestly answered it. He's like, just telling us verbatim what we think. Because for a lot of us, we get married for the feel goods. It's this feel good, happily ever after. Nothing's going to take us away, this type of energy. And that is not true. And so that premarital counseling is key, because you need to know who you are and who you're marrying before you make that commitment.
Amen.
Right.
I like that. I always
I have
tell
a comment that I'd like to add of my own that anybody can address for an answer. So, as young ladies, a lot of the time we grew up, especially if you grew up in the church, right? You learn that a man that findeth a wife findeth a good thing and obtain favor with the Lord. And then you start to create or write the vision, make it plain, write down what you want in a husband so that it can be fulfilled, so on and so forth. We kind of go through these things, and then it begins to build up a what we're looking for in a husband. But oftentimes, what lacks is the addressing how you're supposed to be as a wife. So now,
Mhm.
how do we deal with breaking that stigma or introducing to the next generation that comes after us? How do we build them and put them in the right mindset to become women and men that long to be married, but with the right desires and not a superficial mindset?
I think
Well,
we.
oh,
Uh,
is somebody else going?
oh, go ahead, Julia.
Okay, so I wanted to just say, first of all, marriage is ordained by God. God Himself celebrates and honors marriage. So if you're not patterning yourself after the model that He set, then you're not patterning yourself after the right thing. Now, I can only speak for myself. I had a list of preferences. I want him 6 feet. I want him bald head. I want him with muscles. I want him with this big bank account. I want this. I want that. I want that. I want that. But those were preferences and not purpose. So when you marry in God, you marry for purpose and not preferences. And women, we got that bad. We want it all. But 9 times out of 10, everything you've been wanting, that's why it ain't worked for you, because that ain't what God got for you.
Kid
So
didn't pass out, did he?
when you let go of your list of preferences and get into God's purpose, find out what the words say about a wife, how she should walk circumspectly, how she should be a virtuous woman, how she should be soft. Not that she don't have a voice, but how she should treat a man. And when the man of God begin to get into the word and pattern himself off of the scriptures of what God says he should be, then you'll be able to see spiritually what you should be, because you cannot become any of that without God. I can't become, how can two, I'm coming from this end of the earth, he coming from this end of the earth, and we coming to become one? How can we do that without God? Because the first time he snore, the first time I feel like his feet stink, I'm gonna be ready to go.
You know what?
So it's spiritual. You got to get rid of all this natural stuff.
Why you talking
And
about
build up some tenacity. It takes tenacity to be married.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
this is one of the things that I have that I'll share what God has been working on me in terms of preparing me to be a wife. And so one of the things that I had to learn with this whole list of mine
Oh my
is
God.
that I had to give my list over to the Lord, right? And so we always say, well, the Lord will give you the desires of your heart, right? But I think we miss what
According to his
what that
will.
means, according to his will. But I think we miss what that means, because sometimes God has to change our desires.
Come
And
on.
he has to give us the desires that he wants for us, that he knows is going to bring us to the expected end that he's trying to bring us to, right?
And as we
So
mature in him, your desires change.
Yep.
absolutely. That's exactly what I'm getting to. So what was on my list 2-3 years ago, it's not the same things that are on my list
Come
today,
on.
because he has changed my desires, and they're still the desires of my heart. I used to always be afraid that I don't want the Lord to be changing my desires because I don't want to lose what I want, right? No, 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 no. It's still authentic. I still feel that same way, but because I've matured and I understand why and how it works together, because I've had enough experience out here playing around where I get why the rules will set the way that they work.
Well,
I
Jesus, they
understand.
can't have no stinky feet. That's still on my list from the
Stop
beginning.
it. I understand.
Immaturity. Bad breath. Come on, dude.
I
Please forgive it.
understand exactly why he said no sex before marriage. Now I get it. It makes way more sense to me today than it
Come
did
on.
years ago. But that's because I understand his purpose and his plan for my life. I understand my assignment in God. So now my desires are different. And so
That's good.
therefore, what is on my list and how I'm building my list is more in alignment with who he wants me to be with. Because guess what? He can't send me him if I don't receive him that way. If that's not
That's
what I'm
right.
desiring, I'm not going to want it. But that does not mean that
There
that
you
ain't
go.
what he got planned for me. I have to submit to his will so he can get me together.
That's
And so
right.
I can have the right list.
That's right.
And thank God for those moments or those seasons where God allowed you to get what you think you wanted, so you can learn that's not what you wanted or needed, right? Because God is sovereign, and He's not going to force any one of us to choose Him or choose His way. So sometimes we
Hmm.
go out and do our thing, right? And so we're going to pick who we believe is the right person for us, or go off of our preferences. And it's like, how did that work out for you? Holy Spirit is right there waiting. Like, come on, let's talk about it, because I was ready, because I know, right? So it's like you have to adjust your list. I think a list is cool as long as it's in alignment with God's word. Where
There you
is it?
go.
Always take it back to that. Like if you were looking for somebody who has the fruits of the spirit, those are all qualities that we should all
Exactly.
aspire to have, right? Galatians 5. I went through on Bliss, I went through the entire book of Proverbs, and there's some wisdom for all of us,
Yep.
single, married, men, female,
I
to
love Proverbs.
age, so we can become better individuals for one, first and foremost, for our relationship with God. Because it's more than just the relationships piece with other people. We have to get ourselves together with Him. And so
That's
that
right.
takes, we have our own relationship with God first. And so that's going to seep into our relationships with the romantic partners, the dates, and with marriage and stuff like that. So there's so much valuable wisdom in Proverbs by itself. Like even with that book in the Bible, among many books, you can get so much information and really conviction. And you're like, ooh, am I someone who's gonna build my house up with my words, or am I gonna tear it down? You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
Let the Holy Spirit guide you and walk with you, like Pastor Julia said, like prune you and get you ready for what you're praying for. Because reading His Word, or the Lord's Word, will really help you look at your life and be like, okay, if this is God's standard, where am I falling short and how can I get better? You know what I'm saying? So use that as a barometer versus the world who is consistently changing how men should be, how women should be, what we look for, what we shouldn't look for. We're always going to be debating on these things because more than ever, people have an opinion about what men should do and women should do in relationships. But at the end of the day, what does God say? God hasn't changed.
That's
We are, but God's word never changes, and He set it up for a reason. And if we get in alignment with Him, it'll work out in our favor. We have to trust that it will do that, though. Like Tori was saying.
Yes. I was just thinking that trust is the key here because I know that for a long time, and I can only talk for myself. I know for a long time I had all these concerns. Well, like God wasn't going to be concerned about the things that I was going to be concerned about because I have a few things I'm concerned about. And so I felt, and I feel like to me, I feel like they're petty because like, why is that even a thing? But it's a thing because I know me, right? And so I had to realize my girlfriend brought it to my attention. She said, all these things that you're worried about, you do know that he already knows because you've already told him. So it's not like he's not aware of the things that you are concerned about. Do you really, really think he would give you someone that you would have to be concerned about?
There you go.
But that goes back to whether or not you trust him
Trust.
to listen to you because we feel like, I think sometimes sometimes I feel like God is so big above me that he's not always concerned about the little things that go on with me. But the Bible says that he knows me by down to the number of hairs on my head, right? That's some detail for the Lord to know. So if he's concerned about, so if he knows that, how would he not be concerned about the matters of my heart that concern me regarding marriage? How would he not be concerned? So if I trust him like I say I do, because we love to say we trust him, but if you trust him like you say you do, then you shouldn't be concerned about whatever that is. You
That's
should
right.
always be knowing that he's going to make sure that he gives you what you need as well as what you want.
There you go.
right.
Absolutely.
Tori, you better get out of my head, Tori. You all up in my house and head.
Absolutely. And so connected to both of those things, having a relationship with God and adding on to what Keith Smooth commented, he said that another key to marriage is discovering who you are as an individual before going into an expected lifelong commitment with someone. Stop rushing into labels and start rushing into self-discovery. I think that's an excellent segue to that point. Um, Ken also commented that we miss the mark because we trust in ourselves and not God, which means we blame our partner, and that causes us to lose the war just to win the battle. Great, excellent point, Ken.
And that conversation will keep it smooth said and that alignment in what we're saying. And if you're listening out there, and I'm sure the listeners are getting a different point than we are as speakers, but it seems like we keep intertwining these conversations, which works fantastically. I want to share that, like with me and my wife in particular, we met. We were not looking to get into relationships. She had got out of a relationship. I had got out of a relationship, and we ended up becoming friends. And in one of our conversations, fast forward as being married and finding ourselves, learning, man, I don't really like this, or this really bothers me, or I like this, or I didn't get to do this, and even opening up about our childhood trauma, which is why we're triggered by certain responses we may get from each other. We actually sat and then talked about how we may have rushed the marriage process. We talked about how that time when we met each other, we initially said we want to be friends, but you know how it goes when you having that out of wedlock interaction, it start messing with the chemicals and it becomes an imbalance. And again, I don't knock and I don't ever regret any of that. But the beautiful, let me put a period because there is no but. The conversation is when you get to know yourself better, and Pastor Julia said it. I'm on that. I'm ready to be. God is putting me in the area to be seen, where God is going to put you in a situation, or you're going to be able to glow the way you need to glow because you poured in yourself enough. And a lot of relationships and battles and marriages happen because we're still not pouring in on ourselves and getting close to God. So it's always the person's problem, or they shouldn't have done this, or he shouldn't have done that, or she should have thought about this. And it's like, wait a minute, pause. What role did I play in this? because we both have roles. Women have a role, wives have a role, men have a role. And
Mhm.
again, one of the conversations me and Keep It Smooth have, we're best friends, is talking about how husbands are to love their wives like Christ loved the church. That meant to still love your spouse, even in the moments when the church turned away from Christ. If you want to get real with it, the church, Christ could have walked away at any moment in time and said, you know what, they forgot about me, but he didn't. And so, as men, as husbands, as wives, as women, we have duties that are higher than where we are currently. And so, if we're trying to get to a place that a lot of us have never even seen or felt, we got to become a person that we've never been before.
Mm.
And speaking
That's
to
true.
knowing yourself really quickly, to speaking to knowing yourself, that is the purpose of the alone time. I think that's what Pastor Harris was getting to. That's the purpose of this singleness that we in. We acting like is a death sentence of life of deprivation. No, honey, that's your training ground.
Come on.
That's your growing ground. That's where you learn everything you need to know. And
Yes.
the first thing you need to be knowing is yourself. You need to seek to understand who you are. Now I understand that the only way you're gonna really know is if you ask the Lord, because He the one created you. So who better to ask instead of asking your mom and your daddies and everybody else, the teachers in school tell you who you're supposed to be. Ask the Lord who you're supposed to be because He made you. He designed you for the purposes that He has already set up for predestined for your life. So why wouldn't you be asking him? And I think that goes back to relationship with him. The whole purpose of you being single is for you to establish a relationship with God so he can teach you who you are.
That's
That
right.
way you know how to relate to somebody when he's sending you somebody.
That's true. That's true. We need to move on. We need to move on. Number 5. Why are there dysfunctional relationships in the household of faith? Let's highlight in discussion the resolve.
Woo.
Let's stay on
Okay.
subject. Let's stay on subject. We're talking about dysfunctional relationships in our churches. And what can we do to come to a resolve? We're talking to
Submit
the
to God.
community.
Submit to God. That's number one. We need to be more submitted to the person we follow. If we're gonna be in church, we're gonna be in the faith, and we're gonna say we make this confession by faith, we're gonna need to start acting like it. We're gonna need to make a real decision about if we're gonna live for God or not. Are we gonna follow his principles or not? Because half of the issues that are dysfunction that is going on in church, in relationships within church, is because we're not yielded to God. We do what we want to do. Flesh is on display. It is reigning. It is winning. We are deceived. But God is not mocked. Just so you know, He already knows and He understands that it will come. He's going to bring His judgment, and it will come to pass. And y'all gonna pay for what y'all done if you're not gonna repent. So I'm just saying, if you're going to say that I am in church and I love God and I'm following the principles of God, you need to do that for real, not just with your mouth, but it should be word and deed. Your life should bear fruits. If it is not, you're not going to have good relationships with anybody, your mama, your daddy, your girlfriend, your wife, no, nobody, your kids, nobody. But that's just my first two.
Anybody? Okay. Anybody else want to speak to that?
Yes, I want to speak to that. I totally agree with what she's saying. The first commitment is with God. Because if I'm committed to God, then I'm committed to the things of his house. I'm committed to the church. I'm committed to the leadership. And I found that a lot of leaders don't like to submit to other leaders. They feel like that makes them a weaker leader. So what's happening in the churches is it's opening up the door for competitions and bumping of the heads and another thing I feel like the house of God is dysfunction is because everything is going on in the house of God but the word of God. I believe that if you teach the word of God and stop teaching all these watered down sermons about haters and who got on this products and all that old stuff, it ain't God. We say it's his house, but we're not even presenting him in his own house.
Yes,
So
God, amen.
if we put him back where he belongs, then we can function as a body. As a body, we functioning as a monster now because we got 10 heads, we got 15,000 arms. It's a mess. We took the altar out of the church. We got a stage now. You know, there's a stage. So what we do on stages, we perform. A lot of
Perform.
performance going on these so-called stages. Where's the altar? A lot of times people say, I don't want to be caught up in religion, but God is holy. That's a religion, that's a tradition of God that ain't gonna ever change. So some stuff I agree. Some stuff, yeah, we can tweak because we're in 2023, but some things about God ain't going to change. And we're trying to change. So I believe that that's where the dysfunction is coming in from
Well,
my point of view.
now, yeah, my point of view is it starts with the leadership because the leadership sets the tone for a ministry.
Mm-hmm.
So if the leadership is prideful, wayward, not submitted to God, that's going to be the vomit they're spewing out among the believers.
Come on, that's right.
So it starts with so if there's a lot of dysfunction in the church, a lot of perversion in the church, a lot of togetherness, is because the leader is not doing what it's supposed to do to lead the people right. Because when you start a vision and God is giving you a vision to govern over people, God gives you your assignment and he puts the period behind the sentence. There's no confusion or nothing. And that's our problem now in churches. We've gotten away from what the God-given assignment has been. Because when he calls you, he gives you what you're supposed to do. He gives you a grace for it. Mm-hmm. He finished the work that he starts in you, and he hand down the roadmap to your salvation for you to be able to give to the people. But what has happened is the pastors are preaching themselves.
Come on.
They operate in filthy lucre. They just want money in the big house and the big car.
God, yes.
Your light bill is not being paid. You paying tax to an institution, and you can't even go to the hospitality team and say, my license out. Is there anybody in the church that can help me?
God, yes,
we need to get back to what church is. And it needs to be redirected and reframed. And there's a lot of leaders, and I'm hearing I see this is why this is why I be quiet, because I'm prophetic. I'm a prophetic preacher. So I hear God when I be speaking. So a lot of people are doing things within their own strength, and they're not anointed for the assignment. You have to be anointed. The Bible says the anointing is what destroys the yoke.
Come on.
There's no prayer life. They have no prayer frame in that ministry. Your word level is minimized. You're not teaching the people about putting the root of the vision that God gave to you and those people. Everybody is not called to your house. Everybody is not fit for your vision and your ministry. And the problem is, and I'm hearing the Lord say this, is that a lot of people are sitting in the wrong churches and you're following the wrong leaders because he gave you what church would be beneficial for you for that spiritual focus and that spiritual maturity that they need to teach you. And this is why we are vagabonds and we're going to and fro. Even we are considered to be vagabonds because they don't even have a clue, because they're not preaching the vision, or they don't have a clear vision to be able to put the root in the people. So this is some of the reasons why there's so much dysfunction in the church. And then I must add, a lot of pastors and leaders are intimidated by what's sitting on the pew. Because you're supposed to have the hindsight to know what is in your house and what would be instrumental in assisting the vision, and we all collectively working together, and the fivefold ministry gifts is in position, and we got the church of Jesus Christ going forward, and the deliverance of the people are unfolding because you are doing stuff decent and in order.
I love it. We are definitely we are supposed to be a body fitly joined together and working in the fivefold ministry. And I think that, I think pastors and leaders will sit on the gifts of others because they don't want to share what Pastor Harris calls the stage that we really shouldn't be on anyway. We got to stage this altar. And I agree that we definitely need to stop preaching this watered down gospel that only talks to the trend, right? We're only talking to what's trending, but we're not. What happened to preach the gospel? Preach Christ crucified. That's what saves. That's how God can get the glory. We got to preach the gospel. The gospel is the good news, and it's not about what's trending. So it ain't about the haters. It's not about, let's talk about it. No. Talk about the word of God. How about if you don't know it, then you don't need to be preaching it.
That's true.
Like, sit down if you don't know it. If you can't tell me you're going to be a preacher, you're a pastor, and you don't read the Bible at all. You can't tell me that. You can't tell me you're going to be a pastor or preacher. You're not supposed to be telling me nothing if you're going to have no prayer life. What? He don't talk to you if you don't have no prayer life. I mean, I don't want you. What you want?
And that dysfunction comes from like everyone just said, and I'm not even going to use the term of a broken record, because repetitiveness is how you learn, repeating and recycling. And God is a God of order. So once we step out of order is when dysfunction starts to happen. That's been basically the root of what I love of our dialogue since the very first question is when we step away from the systems of order is where we find dysfunction. And as believers in Christ, we are to be walking and moving like Christ if that's of the profession, that's the professed belief. And if you look at Christ and how Christ moved, he communed with God daily before he spoke to people, before he interacted with people, before he went amongst people. And he wasn't just with the same old people. He was with people that even the church was not feeling was deemed worthy enough to be around. And so just like Prophetess Adawi said, it starts from the leader, it starts above, it starts from the top and trickle down, because what you have as a leader and what we have as leaders is what will spill over. And if we get out of line, then everything that we do is going to be out of line. And it's all about education. It's all about, again, moving forward to find that hope, and then also working ourselves to the future for when the day that Christ comes, that we're ready for that transition. And so when we move the orders of the systems around and we're focusing less on what God wants us to do, or focus less on what Christ has given us as an example, because that's the blueprint. Once you leave the blueprint, they tell me all the time in my class, I'm working on a new promotion. Every time you lose the blueprint, now you got to start over. What's happening is we left the blueprint, but we're not going back to the beginning. We're trying to pick up where we left off. And a lot of us as leaders have to do better at that, because then those followers and those people who are with us, they will see, okay, you know what? Let me start over again too. Because the fixation isn't on the pastor. It shouldn't be the human as the person that you is your savior. It goes above them to the higher power. And I think that's where we've lost that unity and find that dysfunction in the house of faith.
Good. Now let's go. We got to move on. We're going to talk about youth dating. We need to talk to these youth out here about their dating. What is it that they're doing wrong? What age do you think they should be dating? What should they be inviting into their relationships of dating? Let's talk about youth dating. Who's going to start?
We live in a society, and I worked in the library sector for 15 years prior to stepping into financial services. And so working with teenagers, going to the high schools, the junior highs, and what I have found, and even myself, I'm 37, I'll be 37 in October. And so the young people are being shown at a fast and a large rate that they have to be in a relationship, that they need to have somebody, they need to be loved by somebody. And then when you put that societal frame and lens on top of the trauma that they're having when it comes to their parental relationships and their adult relationships that they see, you're now finding these soon to be young adults who crave to be loved. They want to be with someone, and if they're not with someone, they're taught and they're looked at as if they're less than. And so we're literally keeping up with social media. We're literally keeping up with societal media. And what has happened is that with those relationships come the exposure to sex. 12 years old was the youngest I've ever had to have, to work with a young person, a young woman at that, a young girl, because she's 12, who was pregnant and had another kid by the time she was 15. So working with her to get her to graduate was a process. And she would tell us all the time, like, I thought these guys cared about me. I thought these guys loved me. I thought and Mr. Kent, what am I doing wrong? And I would have these conversations with these are my library babies, that you are worthy. However, when you don't have that parental structure, you don't have that behind you to let you know your value. And even then, you can still have that and still be pushed because of the societal, social media, movies, even the kids shows, even watching the kids shows, we have to watch them because they're talking about relationships and dating and stuff like that. However, we have to engage our youth at a very early rate to talk about relationships. Why do you want to be in a relationship? What does a relationship look like? What does it feel like? You can have an interest in somebody, but how do you expound on that? What are the baby steps to it? We did notes in high school as a freshman. I wrote you a note. That's how I showed you I liked you, folded up a special way. We went together then. Now they gotta have a full-blown relationship. And for me, my son is 16. He has had a girlfriend as a freshman. However, you did not have a girlfriend without her mom and dad meeting your mom and your dad.
Mhm.
If your mom don't know who that is, who she is, then you can't go together. He even called me one day. He's like, Dad, Pops want to come by the house. I'm like, you don't ever want to come by here. What's up? What's going on? He's like, I want to come over. I'm like, all right, cool. And he comes over. His mom called me like, Keyshawn, there's a girl that lives around the corner from you, right? I'm like, nah, I ain't know about no girl, because that's the relationship me and his mom have. We communicate. So he get over. I'm like, so you trying to come over here to see some girl? He was like, oh, Pops, I ain't like that. We was gonna meet. We was gonna meet halfway. I'm like, okay, well, let's go. Let's go meet halfway. And so I started getting dressed. And I'm like, I don't want no smoke from your mama because she don't know her. I need to know her. And so, to sum up what I'm saying is that because of what our youth have access to, they have access to things that we did not have access to for years. We have to engage them earlier and get uncomfortable and ask those questions so that we're in their lives and we're asking them and guiding them. So when they make those decisions, even if it's not the right one, they're comfortable enough to come back and say, hey, look, this is something I've done. What do you think? Because my son hit me up like, Dad, I need some condoms. I'm like, what are you doing? Oh, I ain't doing nothing yet, Dad. I just want to be ready. But that's a conversation I was on his bumper because of the youth I've worked with. I was on his bumper in 6th grade. Like, and so there is, for me, as far as what age, I ain't trying to hear about dating until you got good grades. You can control your schedule. So that's high school. My daughter, I'm gonna be level with her like my boys. I need you to be accountable. Then we can start talking about who you like, and then under that parameter, there is no alone time. There is no alone time. It's me, your mama, they daddy. We're constantly in that circle. So we got to beat them. We got to beat society.
I love how you taking it back to the old school when they had to have a chaperone, honey. I believe in the chaperone today because,
And I
but
snitch on kids.
I love it. What I will say is this, because I am noticing that we some strange people in the world. Just so I'm say this, because we overly sexualize children from day one. We do it. We over sexualize children from day one. I'm gonna tell you why I say this. I watch these pictures that we come out with when they first are born. I don't know if y'all seen these pictures where they're super. I mean, they be cute, but they are like the outfits that they having on them, and they got them all. So they got their booties tooted up in the air already. They have, they dressing them with. They're dressing them like many grown people in these little photo shoots, and they're only babies. They got makeup on. They got eyelashes on. They didn't put weave in their hair. Look. I don't understand this new world of weaves and wigs for kids. I don't understand that. I mean, when we was coming up, wigs was for old people. Okay, you was old if you had a wig on. Today, you can't hardly go to school without a wig on. You're gonna get made fun of if you wear your own hair. Okay, it's a problem. I don't understand the world we live in, but so we're over sexualizing them from day one. I can't tell you how many of these young, stupid parents out here, and forgive my words, but out here dressing these kids like many grown-up people. You got them going to many proms at 5 years old. For real? Why they need to be at a prom at 5? They don't even know nothing about being a couple and being linked with nobody at 5 years old. But you got them dressing up talking about it's the prom for grammar school graduations. I'm like, are you serious? It's kindergarten. But we do this, and because we do that, we teach them at an early age that they need to be linked to somebody. That's before anybody in school says anything to them. You're teaching them at an early age that they have to be linked with someone, because you're teaching them how to bring and draw attention to themselves for all of the wrong reasons. There's no reason why a 7-year-old is out here with bamboo earrings and Daisy Dukes on with her lipstick. There's no reason for that. With these mini heels on, ain't no reason for that. You're teaching her how to get the attention of a man, but it's the wrong attention. But you only teach her what you know. I'm saying, as parents, we have to learn how to not sexualize our children. We have to go back to the days when we allowed children to be children. I was a kid for a very long time. I was still playing with dolls at 12. Okay. And I wasn't thinking about no boyfriend. I mean, yeah, I was going to school, and that's clear. If we don't, I'm with Ken. If you don't start having these conversations about boys and your body and how your body works and what's going to happen in the future and how because we don't understand our bodies. I didn't understand my body until I was like 17. Okay, nobody decided to tell me about what my body was doing, right? But that doesn't mean
Right.
my body wasn't doing things. If you don't have these conversations early, then guess where they're gonna get it from? Fast tail Susie,
Fast tail Susie.
who gonna be out
Okay.
here because she didn't try everything because her mom ain't told her nothing either, but she decided to be explorative. Kids are naturally inquisitive. They're naturally curious. If you think that they're not going to be curious about sex and sexual things, just as curious about that as they are about whether or not how they learn how to tie their shoe, you are sadly mistaken. They are just as curious, if not more, especially when they what you let them watch any and everything on YouTube. These cartoons ain't even for them no more. They for adults.
Right.
That's
So
But we
true.
let
let
me
them watch it.
interject. Excuse me. Um, there's a young girl on here. She said that her generation of dating is sad. And then she says that these kids are not kids these days, and which is true. They're in competition. These youth girls and boys are in competition with each other. Who can get who can do what? Who can wear their eyelashes long? Whose
Yes.
hair this pink hair, long nails, all types of stuff to catch the attention of boys.
Mm-hmm.
Turking, wearing false booties. There's a lot of stuff that's causing these youth to want to date, and sex is a driving force. So it's we really as a community need to start basically confronting a lot of these issues with young girls. And I'm excited to say that I am uh, opening up me mentoring for girls, that we're going to be able to start attacking some of these issues or confronting some of these issues where young girls are struggling from the age of 13 and 19. And now that I am opening up a non-for-profit organization, when I'm 501c3 status, hey, bless the Lord, oh my soul, we're going to be able to dig deep and have the resources available for us to carry these conversations further. So I'm excited about that. We have a couple of more topics and we are done at 3 o'clock. So I need everybody's participation, but keep your comments a little brief so we can end good. One of the things is um, why are you struggling with bitterness that's causing the breakdown of relationships? Let's get to the root of the dysfunction. Let's talk about people that are struggling with bitter hearts that they just can't get along. We're going to intertwine two. They just can't get along with nobody because they're bitter. Let's talk about bitterness.
Let us forgive. I'm gonna need y'all to forgive. I'm gonna need people to start forgiving. I think we hold on to so much. We hold on to so much because we think we got a right. We think we got a right to be upset. We think we're justified in holding on to the bitterness that we hold on to. I mean, 9 times out of 10, we mad at people that ain't even living no more. Okay. But we still upset, but we won't let go. And we think we doing something to them. They're dead already. You ain't hurting them. And let's be clear, even if they were still alive, you still not hurting them because when you cut yourself and you bleed, don't nobody else feel that but you. Just so you know. So that means anything else you feel it, don't nobody else feel it but you. And so if you're gonna hold on and then think that someone owes you something, one of the main things I tell all of the women that I work with, you need to release people of the obligation to have remorse about anything they've done to you. You need to release them of it, because you need to learn how to give yourself closure. If you can learn how to give yourself closure, and you do that again, releasing people that you think have an obligation to be remorseful and they owe you an apology. Forget it. Let it go. Release them from it. You know what? Don't worry about giving me no apology. I'm good because I have to move forward. If we learn to do that, I think that would go a long way with bitterness. If we learn to just give our own self closure and forgive, whether we think people deserve forgiveness or not, whether you think they need to have, because you're not forgiving them for them, you're forgiving them for you. Because let me tell you something, you all know they sleeping at night and they is doing just fine. They don't care.
Julia, can you speak to that?
I can. So bitterness, to me, is unresolved issues, and I feel like a lot of times we use the cliche about I'm not scared of nobody, and I confront this and I confront that, but you've let years and years and years of things pile up on your heart that you haven't confronted, and as a result of that, it brings sickness in your body. Um, and even me, when I was on my years of God taking things out and adding things to, I can literally say, for me, that there's not a person from my past, anything from 1992 up until as of recently, that I have an unresolved issue with. Now, there are people that's just gonna not like you, period, because of who you are, because of the oil, because of the mantle, because of the grace, and all of those things. I had an incident the other day where an individual I know nothing about would just, she came and she looked at some property, and I happened to be in that same space, and it was like, "They go Julia, they go your friend." And if when I tell you, if looks could kill, they would have been laying me out. But I can't do nothing about that. So I'm not going back to God, well, God, because I'm good with that. So God will give you something too that you don't even have to let that stuff bother you no more. I used to let so many things and so many people get to me. But when that happened, I saw my growth. I saw that I went home and I went to bed that night and I pulled the covers up and I went to sleep. Now, if she battling with something, that's on her. But you got to know that you clear. And so every night when you do your self-check, you ain't got to pray and say, "Well, Lord, if there's anything in me, take it out." You know if it's there or not. I
Right.
don't have nothing for nobody. I don't have no malice and all that. So you got to check yourself. The Bible says, "Let a man examine himself." So if we examine ourselves more often and be honest, then we won't have to deal with all that stuff piling up, piling up. Deal with it as it comes.
That's true. Tatiana.
Yeah, I think there's some unaddressed hurts that we carry with us and some violations that we don't know how to express to others, or we feel like we may not have a safe space to do that. So we just hold on to the stuff. We hold on to the violation because we're screaming from the inside out, but no one's hearing us. And that's a lie from the enemy to suggest that you're by yourself in anything that you go through, because God is always with us. Even when we do experience valley moments, or we experience some abuse that wasn't really to our fault or anything. So when someone's dealing with bitterness, you have to get that safe space for yourself. If that is your relationship with God, if in that season, make that your priority or your primary source to go to, and be honest and open with how you feel. Like, I feel like this. These are my feelings. Why do I feel this way around this particular person? Why do I not want to go to the family reunion? Why do I not want to go to mom's house for Thanksgiving this year? Like, have those one-on-one, those honest, open conversations with God, and also allow him to bring people into your life to be a safe space, like a community. Like, if we're talking about the church as well, if we're going back on that previous topic, if we're supposed to have a healthy church community, we have to be people who are willing to give space to each other and confess our sins to one another, to edify each other, to pray for each other, to walk alongside each other. And sometimes we feel like we get caught up in the hurt and the isolation from the hurt, that we just don't reach out. And so we're just stuck in that cycle of, "I'm never going to get out of this. I'm never going to feel different from this," because you know what I'm saying? So there's some onus on you to, in a way, speak up and share what it is you need to say and what it is you're feeling, so you can get out of the haze and get that clarity. Because it may be a misunderstanding, it may be a violation that was done against you, but you need to get healing and walk through that, get out of that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
there's a number of things that go into it, but I would say, start with how you feel with God first. Be honest and open with Him, and find your community of people where you can get additional support.
That's good. Kent, do you want to talk about bitterness?
Yes. Bitterness is defined as anger or disappointment of being untreated fairly. And so when we talk about bitterness in a stance that we are, just to reiterate what has already been said, it's that lack of healing, it's that lack of moving on that we allow to sit and fester and pile and pile and pile and pile to the point where you can see somebody who may have done you wrong, and the moment you see them, you can feel that heat in your chest. You can feel yourself, your face, and your body get tightened. And so, and again, that individual's out there living their best life, or they may have passed away and been gone. And so this is a conversation that, if, and I love these questions, that I feel like they're just dominoes of the root. And it goes back to the root, that bitterness, that hurt. Who has hurt you? Why do you feel the way you feel? And how can you move past that? because there's some things somebody mentioned earlier. Their mother passed away. They spoke to their mother before she passed away. Same thing with my adopted mother, my birth mother. I asked her questions. She refused to answer some of those. I came back to Illinois about a year later, haven't seen her since then, got a call that she had passed away in her sleep. There are some things that we just have to be okay with not getting that resolution to. And that's where coming to God brings that huge component. Because what we can't handle, we only got two hands. Dr. King said it. Everything that I've put in my own hands, I've lost. But the things that I placed in God's hands, I still have them. And we're holding on to things that does us a disservice, and we're refusing to open up our hands. Look at your bitterness in that way.
Yeah, that's true.
Can I
So
jump in right quick? Because I want to read this thing that Brenda Smith said. She said, unforgiveness is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. So I feel like if we look at it in that sense, we should really, really learn to purpose to forgive so that we can live well.
that's true. And then Keep It Smooth says some people hold on to bitterness as a defense mechanism. So used to tolerating hurt that they walk in a spirit of expecting more hurt. So they put on a shell. I don't have my glasses on, of thorns around themselves, and that's good. That's good. Okay, so that's bitterness, and bitterness needs to be severed at the root, and it's a graduation because you deal with rejection, low self-esteem, hurt, a wounded heart, all types of things. And bitterness is the ultimate thing. So it's like a growth that's happening. That's why it's so important for us to deal with matters at the embryo stage so you won't get to bitterness. Because once you get to bitterness, then you hate people, and then you murdering people in your heart, and then you can physically murder as well. So bitterness is uh like the end result of the buildup of stuff. That's why it's so important, once again, to deal with stuff little by little and don't allow it to fester or grow. The Bible tells us, and it clearly reads, don't let the sun go down on your wrath, meaning that you got to deal with issues. Don't even go to sleep without you dealing with issues because it begin to grow bigger. And then when you get up, it seems like you're more evil or hateful or bitter than before because you didn't slept on it. And then when you get up and you're mad and still on that same thing that somebody did to you, and then you looking and you seeking revenge. And then you don't know how to be friendly to anybody, showing yourself friendly because you just walking around with this woe is me on you type of mentality, and it's not a good thing. All right, so let's talk about, we're going to intertwine the two. We're going to talk about one, and then we're going to intertwine the last two because we have 3 o'clock is our cutoff time. Why? I want to ask Julia this first. Why do you think that women and men attract the wrong people?
Well, I feel like we attract where we are.
Okay.
And I feel like it's flesh attracting flesh. And so it always goes back to a spiritual thing with me. As I began to change, the Bible say, being in Christ, every man that's in Christ is a new creature. Old things are passed away. So if I'm still attracting what I attracted in my 20s when I wanted a thug and Ray Ray and Pookie, he had to be the biggest drug dealer or the biggest one to call the shots. If I'm still attracting that now, then it's something in me that's pulling that. So we got to find out what's in us that's attracting that.
Tatiana?
I totally agree with Pastor Juliet on that. You taught us a long time ago that you attract who you are. You also attract who you entertain, because sometimes you can't help but people like you because you carry a light, right? Mm-hmm. There's all types of people that are going to come to you, but also who you entertain, like who you give your number to, who you give your time to, who you invest in. That could be a reflection of what's going on in you, good and bad. So there's that. And sometimes we just choose because we are so used to dysfunction, to be honest. Like sometimes we choose out of dysfunction. We choose people because the safe option, the healthy option is too boring. It's too vanilla, or this is what white people do if we want to take it to the Black community. I remember I remember having a conversation with a friend about wanting to have or set up a bank account for my future kids so that they can have college money. And she was like, "That's what white people do." I was like, "Lord, that's financial. That could be a financial dysfunction, but we have to, divorce ourselves from this idea that certain healthy behaviors are only for certain communities that are not ours. We have to get out of that because healthy relationships doesn't have a gender or a race or anything. We have to take that back to again what God established. So it's interesting to me how that stands out, how we end up picking people, but it also can be tied to, what we didn't get or what we did get from our parents. If you had an absent father, maybe you are going to choose men who are avoidant, or if you have a mother who was heavily critical, as a man, you might pick a woman who's heavily critical because that's what you know. That's the dysfunction that you've grown used to. And so anything different from that may not be what you think you need. And so we get attracted to that dysfunction because of that comfort zone that we haven't done the work to get out of.
That's true. And then we attract our kind. I always say that. We attract our kind. So if we're attracting wrong stuff, we need to take self-inventory of ourselves and see what type of baggage that we're still holding on. Toria, did you want to add?
You know what? When I look back at my string of fools, and every time I would talk to my best friend, and he's a guy, and he would always, and I would say, I don't understand why this is not going working out. And every time it's this, da, 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 and I got all these complaints. And he said something to me that hurt my whole little heart and changed my whole little, but it changed my life at the same time. He said, "You keep picking the person for right now, but you don't never pick the person for the long haul." And for a long time, I was upset about the whole comment because I'm like, what do you mean? What he meant was, what I figured out was, I kept choosing the person that I like for right now. They have all of these qualities that I like now, but those very same qualities that I like now are the ones that for a long haul I can't stand because it's really not sustainable. I'm not choosing the person that has the qualities and the characteristics that are sustainable for lifetime, for relationship building, for future building blocks. They don't have those tools, but it works right now because I don't want anything serious. I've said from the very beginning, dating was fun when I didn't want anything for real. Now that I have a priority about what a thought process or a real clear picture of what I want my life to look like, and I want more than just a quick thrill. Now it's a little bit more difficult to date, and it's not as much fun as it used to be. But that's because I'm dating with intention. And so when you start dating with intention, then it changes the game. And until you start dating with true intention, where you are clear about what it is you need, want, and have to have for the future, not just today, then you will start choosing a different type of person.
That's good. And dating with purpose. You have to date with purpose. Okay, Kent, you want to add? Why does men and women attract?
Don't even know what to add in that. It's for many people again the to add to the toppings that already been shared is sometimes it's what's safe. It's what you know, and it's safe because you're familiar with it. You know what to expect from it. When I got in financial services, I was scared because I had to realize I was financially illiterate, which means sometimes in some relationships, when you're looking for someone to sustain, I love what Tori says, for sustainability, they're going to call out some things and make you look at some things about yourself that oh man, I don't want to change that. However, when you go with what works and what's safe, you don't have to change you because it's always them. Right. They're always the one that's bringing this energy or that energy. And then the last thing I would say is we have this complexity where we want to be God, which means we want to change people. We want to help. You know what? I could bring the best out of you, or I can do this for you, or I can change this about you. And that's how we find ourselves in the same situations.
That's good. Okay, so cycles. Let's talk about repeat cycles, generational curses, people having no desire to change. Change is uncomfortable to them. Yeah, let's talk about that. And then we got one more. We could be good. Generational cycles, repeat cycles, and people don't want to change, and change is making them uncomfortable. Toria, you can start.
Okay, cycle. So I really don't know that I completely recognized I was in cycles until I heard Jonathan McReynolds' song Cycles. It has become my mantra because one of the things that he says that is clear, he says, the devil will learns from your mistakes, even if you don't.
Hmm.
And that's how he keeps you in these cycles because you won't learn a lesson.
That's awesome.
So I'm gonna the first thing I'm gonna say about cycles and if you and repeating, the only reason you're repeating them is because you won't learn the lesson. And so God, I feel like, and I understand this, God is not going to take you out of a situation until you learn the lesson. So you'll keep repeating the lesson. It's everything that He gives us is a test. It's only a test. You have to pass the test. If you don't pass the test, you will repeat the grade. That's how it works. So until we start learning the lessons that he's trying to teach us, we will continue to repeat these cycles. And if the reason that we're not learning these lessons is because we don't want to, then that's something that we need to look at. Like, why don't you want to change this thing? How do you not see that this needs to be changed? If the reason that you're not changing, that you're not changing is because you don't recognize the lesson that's trying to be taught, then we need to learn how to ask God, hey, I didn't been in this, this been looped around about 5, 10, 20, 50, 11 times. What are you trying to teach me? What is it that you want me to learn? Because until you start asking, say, hey, help me out, because I must be missing it. I done been here 5 times already. I done missed it. Help me out. So that he can tell you what it is he's trying to teach you. That way, you don't have to keep repeating the lesson. A lot of times we repeat these lessons because we don't want to rely on the person who is giving the test.
Right, Julia. What can you say to yeah? What can you say to people about getting released from a generational curse?
First of all, you have to identify what the curse is because you have to call that thing out by name. Um, a lot of times we think it's just my personality. Well, I'm just like my mother. My mother did this, or my dad did this, and it's really a generational curse. So once you identify that it's a generational curse, then the generational curse has to be severed. And if you can't do it, then you need to connect. A lot of times people say, "Yeah, I went to church and I had a good time. I felt good," but there's no deliverance there. You go 52 Sundays out the year and you keep showing back up the same way, the same way, the same way. You need to go visit sometimes outside of your church if no deliverance is there and get delivered from these generational curses that you have identified. Because there's no such thing as just because my mother did it, I got to do it.
That's right.
So somebody has to identify these curses and get delivered.
Yeah. Can't repeat cycles. What can you say to the public that they can do to basically stop them?
The many people who are in currently the generational cycles, the generational traditions of trauma, repetitive cycles of brokenness. Many of us have the mindset that we're going to do something different. I want something different. However, the waters between thinking and execution will drown you. And a lot of us have spent time thinking about changing, thinking about what they don't want to become, what they do not want to see. I said, I will not be like my father. I will always be in my children's life. I'm going to be a better father. I've been saying that since I was 10 years old. Then I find myself at 30, where my schedule was so busy that I was hardly even seeing my son. I was going through some transformations where I wasn't seeing my son vicariously becoming my father.
Wow.
However, my execution, what was I doing to break that cycle, that trauma thinking? And I had to put myself in the space to be a father, which means showing up, popping up to his mom's house, not just to drop off the child support check or the money order, saying, hey, like, we finna go do some things. Even when he said, Dad, I got plans, I got to do this with my friends. You know what? bring a friend with you. Bring a friend with you. And we'll make this thing work. Yeah, well, we sleeping on pallets today, son. You finna come sleep on this pallet with your dad. You did it when we was younger. We're gonna do it again. We have to act while connecting again to what the women have already said, connecting with God, claiming and calling that thing out. But we have to start acting on something different if we want to see something different.
Tatiana,
That's
why
so.
you what change? Why do you think that people is uncomfortable with change?
I think it's uncomfortable because there's that fear of the unknown. I think that's a common fear for a lot of people. They're like, but what if I do this? What if this doesn't work out for me? They have all these what ifs, and I'm familiar with that. And I'm learning more than ever as I get older and get more mature that leaning into that discomfort and
Mm-hmm.
embracing it because it's a temporary thing at the end of the day. Don't let that discomfort make you think that this is all life has to offer. No, absolutely not. Jesus told us that we will have trials that we will have to face. We will have to have tests. We will go through some stuff. But we can rejoice because he has overcome the world. And because we belong to him, we don't have to go through this thing ourselves. Jesus was the best example about how to endure changing and going through cycles and having to submit to something that was um, maybe not something he wanted to do, but he submitted to God's process because he wanted he wanted to make sure that God's people were returned back to him through salvation. So we had to get back to that understanding of it's only for a moment, it's only for a season, and doing that work is truly an investment. Is saying yes to yourself, like, yeah, this is gonna hurt right now, but sooner than later, I'm gonna start to see results. And it's really an everyday thing. You can make a decision to do something different. Like instead of not asking for help, you can identify that one friend that you know would pull through for you, and see what it's like. It's like, oh, you didn't die. They actually helped you out with something. As if you're a woman who's having a hard time releasing the independent part and you want to be more dependent and open to a man helping you because you want to be a godly wife, um, you could practice, practicing being feminine or tapping into your feminine side that we all have, and
Uh-huh.
allowing a man to do for you, allowing a man to show up for you, because oftentimes that breeds dysfunctional relationships because we're not knowing our true nature and how God wired us to be, because we got disjointed by life and by cycles from our families to the
Right.
that we don't know how to show up as who we authentically, genuinely are. And if the God we serve made us fearfully and wonderfully, we had to figure out what that is. And if that causes some discomfort, then oh well, because there's some rewards for that obedience. So go for it. If he's calling you out into the water like he did for Peter, go out, baby.
Go
It's
to the water, Peter. Mm-hmm.
but go out in faith and do it.
What are some of the signs that people can look for, but they know that they have apprehended a lot of their struggles from a dysfunctional relationship before they jump into another relationship? And that's going to end our discussion. We need to have that discussion because people are going from one relationship to another without, like Julia touched on that earlier. But sometimes people may think that they're healed or over a dysfunctional relationship and they jump into something else. And then that's when they shipwreck. They mess up and it still don't work. And they go to relationship after relationship. Women are getting soul ties. Men is inside this woman. She got another man inside of her, another man inside of her, another man inside of her. Or men, they be soul tied as well from woman to woman and woman to woman. We need to be able to tell our African American family what is it that they could do to stop this activity. So who wants to go first?
Well, one of the things that I want to say about that is the signs. You asked about what are some of the signs. I can remember being numb. Like it's not normal not to cry. That's not normal. I'm not an easy crier, but it's not normal just not to cry at all. So something was holding my emotions back. where I wouldn't let nothing in and nothing came out. Um, Short tempered, like I was easily ticked off. That's another sign. Um, you know, wanted the attention from the wrong places. I mean, it's just so many signs, but the main thing I would want to say is more emotionally. Like I was not emotionally stable. My emotions were all over the place, blaming it on this and blaming it on that. And so at first I thought, okay, well, I'm not going to date for a while. And I stopped dating for a while. The absence of not dating does not mean you're putting the work in to be healed from past traumas. You have to pray and you have to admit to God, you have to say, okay, God, I'm jacked up.
Mm-hmm.
I need you to send me through this process, clean me up, prepare me, and get me ready for my next season. And so it wasn't until then that the work started. I don't care if I've stayed single 20 years. That don't mean you qualify for a relationship now because you were without a man. You didn't do
Right.
no work for 20 years.
There
So
you
you got to
go.
put the work in.
I like that. Come on.
You got to put the work in. So once I put the work in, now I'm looking crazy because now I'm healed and I'm around a lot of sick people. So
Come
it's
on.
weird.
Come on.
It's weird. But because of the work, I was telling my friend the other day, I said, okay, God tore down those brick walls that I couldn't handle. He tore all that down. But now that I'm in my season to be seen, I had to put up a drywall because now I got to protect myself. The wall is not thick, it can be easily removed, but it's a lot of fools out there.
That's the
So I got
truth.
to have some kind of protection. So I
Mm-hmm.
got my own little drywall. And when the right one comes, that'll come down too.
Yeah. 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 Toria.
So what we're talking about now is baggage, right? And I think in a lot of ways, people don't always understand the damage that their baggage brings to the next place. And the biggest way that you can identify that you have baggage is when you are in situations and conversations and things that people say or do, behaviors start to bring up a trigger for you.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Now it's a trigger. So they said this and that's a trigger. And they look at you like, what is going on? I just said hi, right? And you like some type of trigger you didn't have. And they like, and you didn't went clean, smooth in. And they was like, what is wrong with you? I just said you look nice today. So that's when you know that that's a sure sign that you are not unresolved, that you have unresolved issues and you're bringing in, and you have baggage from old relationships. That means every time somebody does any and everything that you feel like bothers you in any way, you can't even really say, hey, you can't sit down calmly and have this conversation because now you're triggered. Because see, if you weren't triggered, you could just have a nice conversation and say, you know what, I don't really like when you do that. And when you
Mm-hmm.
did that, it made me feel this. So
Mm-hmm.
that's how you know that you have a sure sign that there's something going on other than just what's going on in this situation. So I
Right.
would say baggage, and when you identify and really come to the awareness that you have it, I'm like Pastor Julia. Don't just say, "Oh, I'm not going to date for a while," and don't work on yourself. You're going to have to do some work. And working is not just sitting around saying, "I ain't got a man." Sitting around working is really saying, "Hey, I'm gonna pray. Let me go find me some help books. Let me go talk to me some people. Let me give me some counseling. Don't be afraid to counsel. Black people don't never want to get it. I'm telling you, you need it. We all need it. We don't know. Okay. Stop.
Right.
Don't let nobody tell you that you shouldn't. The people that tell you that you crazy for getting counseling, they're crazy. Okay. Because what's crazy is for you to know that you need it and don't get it.
Right. 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 Can't.
Man, Tori be going in, boy. I mean, let's go. Let's go.
She do this.
I'm actually going to reiterate what Keep It Smooth just posted. He said some people refuse to even admit they have baggage because they have no accountability for their part in their unsuccessful relationship. It goes
A narcissistic personality.
when you cannot accept accountability. That is a huge red flag for yourself. It has to be. It has to be. What my mentor tell me, you gotta eat the meat and spit the bones. Can't wait. I take everything personal. Can't wait. You got to eat the meat, spit the bones. If it don't apply, then don't let it fly. And
Right.
so when we are moving into new relationships, the person that we thought that we needed to be for survival is not the person we need to be in thriving mode. They're two different individuals. And when you're going from one relationship to the next relationship, again, you have to look at who you are becoming. And again, looking at who you were, take that accountability. If you cannot take an accountability of the role you played in a situation or in a moment, then how can you take accountability as you're moving forward, which will always show up in your next relationships, whether that's romantic, whether that's professional, whether that's with your family? Because if you can't do it with the people you're closest to, your growth will never, never happen. And so that's a huge component into that because, man, you a lot of people who refuse to take accountability from what it was them. Oh, they did that. Oh, they played a part. Those are individuals you got to watch out for because
Right.
because if they can't talk about their role, they're leaving out something.
That's true. Tatiana?
Can pretty much have my point. Basically, like if you're blaming other people for what happened or the relationship not working out, then that's a big sign that you have baggage or you're not ready to change. And it's like you have to be willing to get see it from a different perspective. A lot of us need a renewing of the mind. We need a perspective shift in regards to how we see ourselves, how God sees us, how we operate in relationships. And so a big part of that is taking your L's and turning them into lessons. God doesn't waste any season that we go through. If we had a season where we chose whatever we wanted and disregarded God, He's gonna find a way to bring it back so you can give God the glory and help other people who've been through the same situation. Because nothing that we're talking about or none of our stories, anecdotes have are new to God. They've happened years and decades and thousands of years before us. And so it's a blessing to get wisdom from our experiences, but also be willing to share that with others so that we can move on and move forward and be like, I did make these wrong choices, but I learned from them. I repented, I moved forward, and what I'm going to do now, you know what I'm saying? So now you're saying like I did that, but now today, this season or this year, I'm doing this. I'm making a different change. And so that is hopefully a motivator that you can get from God revealing to you, your part in things and being open enough and humble enough to own up to it. You're not gonna get in trouble. You are not going to get in trouble for owning your mistakes, okay? It's all right. We are
Right.
all just trying to figure it out.
Yes. Now, we are at 2:48. You all did extremely well. I'm really, really excited about this. We do know people out shopping and whatever, and they go back and look at the video because it's posted and it's live. So I'm asking you all to just continue to invite people on your page to this particular setting because we had some good meat here that we was able to digest. And this is just one of many. And I am going to invite you all back to other platforms because we're going to enlarge this thing and a lot of wisdom among you all, a lot of knowledge and understanding has been handed down today. And I'm really, really excited about it because God has shown himself faithful. And I believe that those that have witnessed this live and heard it thus far have really been blessed. So if that's all that needs to be said, anybody have anything else to say for the last, 11 minutes? Go ahead, Tati.
Yeah, just one quick thing for my fellow singles who are in their 30s on just to be encouraged and continue to do the work, work in tandem with God as you prepare for what you want in life. Because a lot of people in our age group get a lot of pressure, even over 40. Like, oh, you should be married by now, or you should have kids by now. You should have this. You should have that. No, get reconnected with God because there's so much pressure from the outside world for us to do things a certain way at a certain timeline. That's one of the reasons why I wrote the book that I did about turning 30 back several years ago. But
Mm-hmm.
it's really just to stay encouraged in your path and what you're supposed to be doing.
Right.
And the person you need to be worried about pleasing is God. So that's it.
Anybody else has something to say?
Good job, Tatiana. The only thing that I would say is that I just want to encourage the people to definitely focus on, you know, really working on yourself, and not just working on yourself by yourself, but working on yourself, reestablishing your a relationship with God, and then really getting to know who you are intimately with his guidance, so that you can start so he can start revealing the things to you about you that you do need to change, that you do need to improve, so that then now you can start being the better version of yourself that he is ordaining and calling for you to be. Walk out that journey.
That's great. Julia, you want to say
Yeah,
something?
in closing, I just want to say, encourage the people that's on just to do inventory. We do inventory every year in our closets. We declutter for spring. We do spring cleaning. We do all these things, but we never do it within ourselves. So it starts there. So once you examine yourself, declutter, then you can think clearer and put the work in. So that's my closing remarks.
Yeah.
I am just elated to be a part of this conversation, this dialogue. My closing thoughts would be to let everyone know that with relationships, whether romantic, professional, friends, whatever, family, they're scary. They're
Right.
scary, especially if you've lived this thing called life and you have had relationships that have been strained and broken, which we went through the whole gamut this afternoon and still don't have enough time to talk about every relationship
Right.
that we've had. I do want to say, shake that fear that comes with that personal growth, because we focus more on our professional development. We focus on career readiness. We're ready to do what we got to do to go get the bag. At the same time, we're losing out on what we desire and what we need. We are human beings, and God created us to be relationship based creatures. And so we have to shake those fears of that personal development, because when you develop, the people that need to be around you will be around you. And those who don't need to be around you, baby, they're going to fall off. And it's going to be okay if they do, because you're going to invite more people, better quality, should I say, into your life for what you need for that season.
Great. And can't I said, okay, now you're gonna be hired on because we're gonna launch a thing called I Speak. What is it? I Speak as a Man. So we're really gonna be utilizing you for that because I was looking for some more men mentors. We got a lot of women mentors. I know I'm gonna be using Tori again, of course, Sister Julia, and Tatiana is a part of me mentoring as well. So I'm excited for what's up ahead, and we got some really nice and exciting things coming up. And God is flipping this thing because it's timely. We've been behind time long enough for people to really hear the right stuff that's uncompromised. So it's time to dig deep. I love you all. Bless you. Until next time. Bye bye. Hey, we end this. Julia, I text you.